Hey guys, just want to say thanks for tuning in today. Smash that subscribe button if you're new here, and as always, please like this video if you enjoy the stories. Now, let's get into the stories.
I used to think the scariest thing that could happen at 3 a.m. was some random notification sound or my upstairs neighbor dropping something heavy. I was wrong. 3:17 a.m. is way worse. That is the exact time my bedroom door unlocked. Not opened, not creaked, unlocked. I remember staring at the red numbers on my alarm clock, half asleep, trying to figure out if I was dreaming. 3:17. My brain was foggy, like when you wake up too fast and your thoughts are still loading. Then I heard it again. The soft metal click of my bedroom door handle turning from the outside. I live alone in a small basement apartment on the edge of town. It is one of those places that used to be someone's storage space before they decided to rent it out for $900 a month. Low ceilings, one tiny window near the top of the wall, and a hallway so narrow you have to turn sideways to move furniture. I always lock my front door and my bedroom door before sleeping. Always. So when that handle turned, my first thought was that someone had broken into the apartment and was now inside my room. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. The door slowly pushed open, and the hallway light spilled across my floor. She was standing there, the girl from Tinder. She was holding a white plastic takeout bag like it was completely normal to show up in someone's bedroom in the middle of the night. Her hair was tied back the same way it was on our date, same oversized hoodie, same calm expression. My brain was still catching up. I had only met her once. We matched on Tinder 2 weeks earlier. Her profile was pretty normal. Selfies in her car, a picture with a dog, one blurry concert photo. Nothing weird. We talked for a few days, mostly about random stuff. She seemed chill, into horror movies, late night drives, greasy food. She laughed at my dumb jokes. I remember thinking it was refreshing because she didn't ask a million questions. We met at a taco place downtown. Nothing fancy. I paid. It was like $28 total. We sat there for maybe an hour. Conversation wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad either. She stared at me a lot, like really looked at me. I figured she was just shy. After we ate, she suggested we walk around. It was cold, so we didn't stay out long. I dropped her off at her car. She hugged me for a little too long, but again, I ignored it. She texted me that night saying she had fun. I said, yeah, me too. Then I slowly stopped replying. Not on purpose. I just got busy. School, work, whatever. I read one of her messages and forgot to answer. Then a day passed. Then two. She sent another one asking if I was okay. I told her, yeah, just busy. She sent a smiley face. That was it. Until she was standing in my bedroom at 3:17 a.m. She stepped inside and gently pushed the door closed behind her. The click of it shutting sounded louder than the unlock. She placed the takeout bag on my desk like she was setting something down in her own place. She told me I forgot this at her place. I sat up slowly in my bed. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was moving my whole body. I didn't remember leaving anything at her apartment. I had never even been to her apartment. The only time we were together was at the taco place and the sidewalk outside. She reached into the bag and pulled out a small plastic container. It looked like leftovers. She set it on my desk next to my laptop. Then she just stood there. I finally found my voice, but nothing came out. It felt like my throat had closed up. My mind started racing through everything. I never told her where I live. I never posted my address. My social media doesn't have location tags. My Tinder profile didn't mention my neighborhood. When I dropped her off after the date, she drove separately. She never saw my car parked outside my place. I was sure of it. The worst part was how calm she looked. Like she belonged there. Like this was completely reasonable. I glanced at my phone on the nightstand. No missed calls. No notifications. No signs of forced entry from what I could see. The hallway outside my room was dark, except for the faint kitchen light I always leave on. She walked closer to my bed and sat down at the edge. The mattress dipped under her weight. I could smell the food from the container. Noodles, maybe. Something with soy sauce. She started looking around my room, slowly, taking it in. My clothes on the chair, the posters on the wall, the stack of laundry I hadn't folded. I finally managed to ask how she got in. She smiled a little and said it was easy. That was it. Just easy. My stomach dropped. I replayed the last 2 weeks in my head. Every text. Every detail from the date. Did I mention my street name without thinking? Had she followed me after? Was she parked somewhere nearby watching? Then I remembered something small. When I dropped her off that night, I had used my Maps app to check traffic before leaving. My phone was mounted on the dashboard. Maybe she glanced at it. Maybe my home address was saved in recent locations. I felt stupid for not thinking about that sooner. But even then, how did she get inside the building? There are only 4 units. The main door stays locked. She stood up and then walked toward my bedroom window. She looked at the tiny sliding latch and ran her finger across it. Then she told me she had been here before. Not inside the room, just outside, watching which lights turned on at night, watching when I left in the morning. My chest felt tight. I tried to stay calm. I didn't want to make any sudden moves. I didn't know if she had something on her. A weapon. Anything. She walked back to my desk and opened the container. Inside wasn't noodles. It was my spare key. My actual spare key that I keep taped inside a fake rock near the small patch of dirt outside my window. I use it when I lock myself out. I'd used it twice this year. She said I should hide things better. My brain felt like it was glitching. She had been close enough to my window to find that, to stand there, to search around in the dirt. I thought about screaming, but the walls in this place are thick, and my neighbors are old. I doubt they would hear anything. She sat back down and started talking about our date, about how she knew I wasn't that interested, how she could tell by the way I checked my phone, how I leaned away slightly when she hugged me. She said she doesn't like being ignored. Her voice was still calm, steady, like she was explaining something small, like returning a borrowed charger. I asked her what she wanted. She looked around again and said she just wanted to see where I slept, to see if it matched what she imagined. That sentence hit me harder than anything else. She imagined it, meaning she had thought about this, planned it. I noticed then that the front of her hoodie had dirt stains on it, small ones, like she had been kneeling outside. She stood up and walked toward the door. She paused and turned back to look at me. She said I should text her tomorrow, that ignoring people makes them curious. Then she unlocked my bedroom door again and stepped into the hallway. I heard the front door open, then close. Silence. I didn't move for a full 5 minutes. I just sat there, staring at the container with my spare key inside. My whole body felt numb. When I finally got up, I checked every lock, every window. I opened the front door and looked outside. The parking lot was empty. I went back to my room and grabbed the container. Underneath the key was something else. A small folded piece of paper. I opened it. It was a printed screenshot of my Tinder profile, except it wasn't the one I remembered. The bio was different. The pictures were slightly different, like someone had edited it. At the bottom, under my name, it said last active 3 minutes ago. I hadn't opened Tinder in days. I checked my phone. Tinder was open in the background, and there was a new message sent from my account to her profile. It was just one sentence. See you soon. I stared at it for a long time. I don't remember typing that. I don't even remember unlocking my phone while she was there. I deleted the app immediately. Then I sat on my bed until the sun came up. The next morning, I found dirt on the inside of my front door, like someone had wiped their shoes before leaving. I changed the locks that day. Cost me $120. I moved out a week later. Didn't tell anyone the new address except my parents. I never heard from her again. But sometimes around 3 a.m., I wake up for no reason, and for a split second, before my brain catches up, I swear I hear that soft metal click. The first message came in at 7:12 a.m., and I thought it was spam. I was still half asleep, face smashed into my pillow, when my phone buzzed over and over on my nightstand. At first I ignored it. Then it kept going. Instagram, Snapchat, even Facebook, which I barely use. I remember thinking someone from high school must have posted something about me. I grabbed my phone, one eye open, and the first thing I saw was a dim request from a guy I didn't know. No profile picture, just a username with a bunch of numbers. He wrote that he heard I was slightly guarded, but worth the effort. My brain didn't even process it. I assumed wrong number or some weird copy-paste scam. Then I saw another message. And another. One said he agreed with the conversationalist part. Another asked what restaurant I preferred for first dates. One literally asked if my rating had gone up since last night. My stomach dropped. I'd opened the most recent notification. It was from him, the guy from Tinder, the one I went out with last night. He had sent me a screenshot at 1:04 a.m. I had fallen asleep before I saw it. The screenshot was of a clean, simple website. White background, gold stars at the top, and in bold at the center was my full name. First, middle, and last. Underneath it were 5 stars. 4 of them were filled in. The 5th was empty. And below that, one short line. Good conversationalist, slightly guarded. That was it. I remember staring at it for a solid minute, trying to convince myself it was fake. Maybe someone with my name. Maybe a joke, but it was my exact name. Not common. Not shared with anyone I know. My hands started shaking as I opened Tinder and scrolled to his profile, still there. Same pictures, same smile. The one where he looks like he is trying too hard to seem relaxed. Our date had been normal. Boring, even. We met at this trendy burger place near the waterfront. Loud music, neon signs, overpriced milkshakes for $12. He was tall, well-dressed, clean sneakers. He talked about his job in tech, how he invests, how he likes giving honest feedback. I remember that phrase now. Honest feedback. At one point, he asked me what I thought my biggest flaw was. I laughed it off and said probably overthinking. He nodded like he was taking notes. I thought he was just one of those analytical types. Not my usual type, but I figured why not. After dinner, we walked along the water for a bit. He asked if I was seeing other people. I said casually that I was still figuring things out. He didn't react much, just kind of smiled and said that makes sense. He didn't try anything weird. No red flags. No creepy comments. He hugged me at the end, polite, distant. Then he texted me later saying he had a nice time. I went to sleep thinking it was just another average first date. Now I was staring at a rating page with my full legal name on it. I clicked on the screenshot. At the top was the website name. It sounded like some startup. Clean, minimal, professional. I typed it into my browser. It loaded. And there I was. My name at the top. A small circular profile picture pulled straight from my LinkedIn. Not even my Tinder photo. My actual professional headshot. I felt sick. Under the stars were sections. Appearance, 4 out of 5. Punctuality, 5 out of 5. Conversation depth, 4 out of 5. Emotional openness, 3 out of 5. Willingness for second date, pending. Each one had short comments under it. Nothing explicit, just clinical, like a product description. Dresses well but plays it safe. Maintains eye contact but deflects personal topics. Likely to require patience. I couldn't breathe properly. This wasn't just him writing something in his notes app. This was a full website, structured, organized. At the bottom of the page, there were other usernames leaving comments. All male names, some with profile photos. Agree with guarded assessment. Had similar vibe. Worth pursuing if you are consistent. My phone buzzed again. Another message request. Someone asked if the guarded part meant I had trust issues. Another guy asked if I was still available for booking. Booking. I felt my face get hot. I went back to the website and scrolled further. There was a search bar. I typed in a random female name. Multiple results popped up, each one formatted the same way. Full names, ratings, notes, comments from different men. Some pages had dozens of reviews. I clicked on the About section. It described itself as a private community for men to share dating insights and optimize partner selection. It claimed transparency builds better connections. It said all entries were based on real interactions. It also said profiles are generated automatically through submitted screenshots and publicly available data. I realized then how he did it. He must have taken my Tinder profile, cross-referenced it with my LinkedIn, maybe even Facebook, pulled my full name from somewhere, built a profile on that site, and he didn't just post it privately. The page had a share button. I checked the screenshot he sent me. There was a small counter at the top, 48 views. I went back to the live page. 132 views. The number was climbing in real time. My messages kept coming in. Some were just creepy compliments. Others were oddly formal, like they were evaluating me too. One said he was part of the same community and appreciated the honest review. I felt like I was being auctioned. I texted him immediately, asked what the site was, asked why my name was on it. He replied 10 minutes later. He said it was just feedback, that I shouldn't take it personally, that transparency benefits everyone. He said most women appreciate knowing how they come across. I asked him to take it down. He said he didn't have full control over removal once a page was active. Community moderation decides that. Community moderation. I refreshed the page again. New comment. Seems high maintenance based on guarded note. Another one. Could be long-term potential if rated 4.2 or above. They were talking about me like I was an app with updates. I tried reporting the website. I sent emails to the contact address listed. No response. I reported his Tinder profile too. By noon, the view count was over 600. I started getting texts. Actual texts. Someone had found my number. One message just said 4 stars is still solid. I felt like I was trapped inside something that I didn't agree to, like my identity had been turned into a listing without my consent. I went back through our messages from before the date. He had asked subtle things, my last name, what field I work in, whether I had a public portfolio. At the time, it felt like interest. Now it felt like data collection. I found a forum thread linked at the bottom of my rating page. It was locked, but the title included my initials. Catch preview showed part of a sentence. Candidate appears promising but emotionally reserved. Candidate. That word made my skin crawl. I tried calling him. He didn't answer. I drove back to the burger place where we met. I don't know why. Maybe to ground myself. Maybe to feel like the date was real and not some setup. I sat in the same booth, looked around at people laughing, eating fries, going about their normal lives. Meanwhile, my full name was trending on some private rating site for men. My phone buzzed again. Someone sent me a link. It was a discussion thread on a different platform. A screenshot of my rating page had been reposted with a caption 4-star guarded type. The comments were worse there, more aggressive. More detailed speculation about my personality, my boundaries, what guarded might mean. I felt exposed in a way I can't even explain. Not physically, just that my privacy had been peeled back layer by layer. By late afternoon, my LinkedIn profile had 3 new connection requests from men I didn't know. One message said I read your review and wanted to form my own opinion. I deleted my LinkedIn. I deleted Tinder. I set my Instagram to private. That night, around 11 p.m., I checked the site one last time. My rating had changed. It was now 3.8. Under willingness for second date, it said unlikely due to reaction. There was a new comment at the bottom. Overly sensitive to constructive feedback. I stared at that for a long time. Then I closed the browser. The next morning, the site was still up. My name was still there, and the messages were still coming in. I did not think mirrors could ruin your life. I used to check myself in them constantly. Car mirror, gym mirror, random store windows. Quick glance, fix hair, move on. I never thought twice about what was behind me. Now I can't look into one without thinking about that night. It started normal. Too normal, honestly. I almost wished there had been some obvious red flag so I could have avoided everything. But there wasn't. She just looked slightly different than her pictures. That's it. We matched on Tinder on a random Thursday. Her profile was simple. A few selfies, one hiking photo, one with a coffee cup covering half her face. She had the soft smile in most of them. Nothing crazy filtered, nothing obviously fake. I've seen way worse. We talked for about a week. She was funny in a dry way. Short messages. Kind of mysterious, but not in a try-hard way. She never sent voice notes. Never sent snaps. Just text. I didn't think much of it. We decided to meet at this small ramen place downtown. It's the kind of place with dim lights and narrow booths, where the tables are so close you can hear other people's conversations. It's cheap too, like $14 for a big bowl, so I go there a lot. I got there first. I always do. I hate walking in and scanning the room, so I wait. When she walked in, I knew it was her. But at the same time, it wasn't exactly her. Her hair was darker than in the pictures. Her jaw looked sharper. Her smile felt a little wider, like it stretched more than it should. But if you saw her without the context of the photos, you wouldn't think anything was off. She was still attractive, just slightly different, like someone who edited their pictures, but not in a dramatic way. I brushed it off. Everyone picks good angles. She hugged me when she sat down. Her arms were cold, like she had just come from outside without a jacket. It wasn't even that cold. Conversation was fine at first. She asked about my job. I asked about hers. She would promote doing something with design. She didn't go into detail. Whenever I asked a follow-up question, she would kind of redirect it back to me. I noticed she stared at me a lot, not in a cute way, more like she was studying me, especially my face, my eyes. At one point, she asked me what my favorite feature on a person is. I laughed and said I don't know, probably eyes. She tilted her head slightly and asked what kind. I said I never really thought about it. She kept smiling. Halfway through eating, I started feeling weird. Not sick, just uneasy. The lights in the restaurant felt dimmer than usual. Her face looked different depending on the angle. Sometimes her nose looked smaller, sometimes longer. I told myself it was just shadows. Then she reached across the table and touched my cheek lightly. She said I had symmetrical features. She traced the line of my jaw with her eyes like she was memorizing it. I made an excuse about needing to use the bathroom, partly because I actually did, partly because I needed a minute away from her stare. The bathroom was down a narrow hallway. When I walked in, it was empty. Just one long mirror above the sinks and 2 stalls. I went to the sink first, splashed some water on my face, looked up into the mirror. She was standing behind me. I jumped. My heart slammed into my chest. But when I turned around, there was no one there, just the empty bathroom. I looked back at the mirror. She was still there in the reflection, except it wasn't exactly the same version of her sitting at the table. Her hair in the mirror was lighter, almost a shade from her Tinder photos. Her face looked softer, rounder. Her eyes were slightly wider. She was standing directly behind me, close enough that her chin was almost touching my shoulder. I spun around again. Nothing. My breathing got fast. I told myself I was just imagining it. Maybe my brain was mixing her photo version with the real one. I looked into the mirror again. Now she looked different. Her face was sharper, cheekbones higher, lips thinner, her eyes darker, almost hollow. She wasn't smiling this time, just staring at me. I stepped back from the sink. The reflection version of me moved perfectly in sync, but she didn't. She stayed still for a split second longer before adjusting. That's when my stomach dropped. I slowly raised my hand. My reflection did. She didn't. She just kept staring. I turned my head slightly to the side. In the mirror, she leaned closer, like she was trying to align her face next to mine. I felt cold all over. My brain was trying to come up with a logical explanation. Maybe it was some kind of trick with lighting. Maybe I was panicking. I stepped to the side to look at the smaller mirror near the paper towel dispenser. In that mirror, she looked completely different again. Shorter hair, different nose. Even her skin tone was slightly off, like different filters cycling through. Every mirror showed a different version of her standing behind me. None of them meshed exactly the girl sitting at our table. I backed away until my shoulders hit the stall door. I forced myself to turn around slowly, expecting her to be physically there this time. The bathroom was still empty. When I looked back at the main mirror, all the versions were there at once. It's hard to explain. It was like layers, multiple faces overlapping behind me, all slightly different, all watching me. Some were smiling, some weren't. One looked angry, one looked sad. I blinked hard. They were gone. Just me in the mirror, alone. I stood there for at least a minute, staring at my own face, trying to steady my breathing. Maybe I was dehydrated. Maybe I stood up too fast. Maybe my brain glitched. I left the bathroom. When I walked back to the table, she was sitting exactly how I left her. Hands folded, slight smile. But her face looked closer to one of the mirror versions. I couldn't tell which one. She asked if I was okay. I said yeah. Probably too fast. She tilted her head and then asked me which one I prefer. My blood went cold. I asked what she meant. She just kept looking at me like she was waiting for a real answer. Her eyes felt heavier now, darker. I didn't respond. I just stared at her face, trying to see if it would shift again. And it did. Not dramatically, just subtle, her nose slightly narrower, her lips slightly fuller, like someone adjusting sliders in real time. I felt trapped in that booth. She leaned forward and said most people have a preference. Softer, sharper, kinder, stronger. I noticed then that the lighting above our table was reflecting in her eyes differently, like there were multiple catchlights instead of one. I stood up and told her I wasn't feeling well. As I grabbed my jacket, I glanced at the small decorative mirror on the wall behind her. In that mirror, she wasn't sitting across from me. She was sitting next to me, close, shoulder to shoulder. But in reality, there was empty space there. I didn't say anything. I just walked out of the restaurant. I could feel her watching me the whole way to the door. When I got outside, I looked at the window reflection. She was standing behind me again. But this time, the face was one I had never seen before. Completely unfamiliar. Blank. I turned around. She was still inside, sitting at the table, smiling. I blocked her on everything that night. Deleted Tinder. I thought that was the end of it. A week later, I was at the gym. I finished a set and looked up at the wall mirror. For half a second, I didn't see my own reflection alone. There was someone standing behind me. Her face was different again. I haven't gone back to that ramen place. I avoid mirrors when I can. Sometimes I catch glimpses in store windows in my car and in my phone screen when it's black. She's not always there. But when she is, it's never the same face twice.
Hey guys, really sorry to disturb you, but if you're enjoying the stories up until this point, please smash that like button. That's all I'm asking for you guys. Let's break some records this year. Now back to the stories.
I stopped trusting my phone after that night, which is stupid because your phone is supposed to be the one thing that makes you feel safe. Maps, emergency calls, location sharing, battery percentage right there at the top like a tiny comfort blanket. Mine betrayed me at 12%. I remember exactly where I was sitting when it happened. Corner booth, rooftop bar, one of those places with fake plants hanging from metal beams and heaters that barely work. It overlooked the highway, so you could see red brake lights stretching for miles. It was kind of pretty in a sad way. I matched with him 3 days before. His profile was clean. Professional photos, nice smile, bio about working in cybersecurity. That should have been my first pause, but it wasn't. It sounded impressive. Stable. He even had a picture with a golden retriever. We talked a lot before meeting. He was quick with replies, almost too quick. If I took 10 minutes to answer, he answered in under 1. I figured he just had notifications on. He suggested the rooftop bar. I had never been there, but I Googled it. Good reviews. Cocktails were like $18 each, which is kind of insane, but whatever. First dates are always overpriced. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting straight, hands folded on the table. He stood up immediately when he saw me. Polite, calm, steady eye contact. He looked exactly like his pictures, maybe even better. Darker hair, sharp jawline, expensive watch. He gave off organized energy, like the kind of guy who plans his week in advance. We ordered drinks. Mine was something with grapefruit. His was just whiskey. Conversation was smooth at first. He asked about my job, my family, what part of town I live in. I kept it vague on purpose. Just said North Side. He nodded like that was enough. He talked about cybersecurity for a bit, about how most people underestimate how much of their data is exposed. He said people think they're private, but they're not. Everything leaves a trail. I laughed and said that's kind of scary. He smiled in a way that didn't quite reach his eyes and said it depends who's looking. I checked my phone a few times during the date, not because I was bored, but because my friend asked me to text her when I got there and then again an hour in. Just a safety thing. I had 23% battery when I arrived. I remember noticing because I almost brought a charger, but decided not to. Around an hour into the date, my phone buzzed. I glanced down quickly to read the notification. My battery said 12%. I didn't even unlock it, just saw the number at the top. That's when he casually told me I don't need to keep checking my phone because he can see my battery's at 12%. My brain froze. I slowly looked up at him. He was still holding his glass, still relaxed, like he had just commented on the weather. I asked how he knew that. He shrugged and said it's not hard. My first thought was that maybe he saw it reflected in my glasses, but I wasn't wearing glasses. Maybe the screen brightness reflected in his eyes. That didn't make sense. I looked back down at my phone. 11%. Before I could say anything else, the screen went black. Completely dead. It didn't even give me the red battery icon. Just off. I stared at it for a second, pressing the side button. Nothing. When I looked back up, he was smiling. Not a huge smile, just enough. He told me not to worry. He already knows where I live. It felt like all the noise from the rooftop disappeared, like someone turned down the volume on the entire city. I forced a laugh and asked what that was supposed to mean. He said he prefers being prepared. Then he started listing things about me. Not obvious things, specific things. The coffee shop I go to on 8th Street every Saturday morning. The gym I signed up for 2 months ago. The fact that I ordered Thai food last week from a place 3.2 miles from my apartment. My chest felt tight. I asked how he knew that. He tapped his watch lightly and said data is everywhere. I felt exposed in a way that's hard to describe, like my walls weren't real. Like everything I thought was private was just floating around waiting to be collected. I told him it wasn't funny. He said he wasn't joking. Then he leaned in slightly and said my exact street name. Not just North Side, the actual street. I felt my hands start to shake under the table. I tried to stay calm. I didn't want the panic in public. I asked if he had looked me up. He said everyone is searchable if you know how. I started replaying everything, my social media, my tag locations, my old posts. Did I ever post a picture outside my building? Did someone tag me? He kept talking calm, steady. He said most people reuse passwords. Most people connect their dating profiles to Instagram. Most people don't realize how much metadata is attached to photos. I remembered that one picture on my profile, the one taken in my kitchen, the window behind me. My stomach dropped. He said that view was easy to match with public real estate listings. I felt stupid, careless. I told him this was crossing the line. He tilted his head slightly and said he just likes knowing who he's investing time in. Investing. My phone was still dead in my hand. I felt completely cut off. No way to call an Uber. No way to text my friend. I looked around for an exit plan. The rooftop had one main staircase down and an elevator on the other side. He noticed me scanning and asked if I was uncomfortable. I said I just needed to use the bathroom. He nodded slowly and said second door on the left. I grabbed my bag and walked fast for the stairs instead. I didn't go to the bathroom. I went straight down, weaving through people, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. When I reached the street level, I realized I had no way to order a ride. My apartment was about 15 minutes away by car. Walking would take almost an hour. I stepped outside onto the sidewalk and looked back up at the rooftop. He was standing at the railing, looking down at me. Not waving, not calling out, just watching. I started walking, fast. After about 2 blocks, I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't turn around immediately. I didn't want to confirm it. Then I heard his voice close behind me saying I forgot to close my bar tab. I spun around. He was right there, calm as ever. I asked why he followed me. He said it didn't make sense for me to walk when you could drive me home. I told him I was fine. He said my building has limited parking, but he knows a side street nearby where it's easier. My throat felt dry. I asked how he knew that. He just smiled again. A car pulled up to the curb behind him, black sedan, tinted windows. He said he had already called it when my battery hit 15%. I don't even remember how I got out of that. I think adrenaline just took over. I flagged down a random taxi that was passing and got in without thinking. I told the driver to just go. Anywhere. I didn't go home that night. I went to my sister's place across town. The next morning, my phone finally charged. There was a notification waiting. A message from him. He sent a screenshot. It was a satellite view of my apartment building, with a small blue dot directly on my unit. Shiv left when she ordered dessert without asking me if I wanted any. That's the detail that sticks with me now. Not the silent men. Not what she said later. Just the way she smiled at the waiter and asked for something sweet like the night was already decided. We met at this quiet Italian place on the edge of downtown. Not fancy, not cheap either. Pasta was around $22 a plate. Low lighting, candles on each table, the kind of place people go when they want to pretend they're in a movie. I matched with her a week earlier. Her profile was simple. No group photos, just her. Soft brown hair, straight, always worn down. Calm eyes. She didn't have a long bio, just one line about liking honest men who can hold eye contact. We talked every night leading up to the date. She was intense, but in a focused way. She asked deep questions right away. What scares you the most? What's the worst thing you've ever done? What do you think people misunderstand about you? I remember thinking it was kind of refreshing. Most dates are surface level. This felt different. When I got to the restaurant, she was already there. Sitting straight, hands folded neatly in front of her. She stood when she saw me, like she'd been waiting. She looked exactly like her pictures. Maybe even better. Clear skin, steady gaze. She didn't look nervous at all. I was the nervous one. Dinner started normal. Pasta, wine, small talk. She didn't check her phone once. Not even when it buzzed. She just let it sit face down on the table. She asked me about my childhood. Not in a casual way. More like she was studying me. Like my answers were part of something. I noticed she barely ate. Just moved the pasta around on her plate. But she watched me eat. Every time I took a bite, her eyes followed the fork. It sounds dramatic, but it felt like she was evaluating me. Like she had a checklist in her head. Halfway through dinner, she asked if I ever disappoint people. I laughed awkwardly and said probably sometimes. She nodded slowly like she expected that. After the plates were cleared, she didn't even look at me before asking the waiter for dessert. Chocolate cake. 1 slice. 2 forks. I wasn't really in the mood for dessert, but I didn't argue. While we waited, she reached for her phone for the first time. She told me she wanted me to meet her friends. I thought that was a joke. Like maybe a quick hello to a group chat or something. She turned the screen toward herself and started a FaceTime call. It rang longer than I expected. Then it connected. At first I only saw a dark room. Then the camera adjusted. There were about 20 men on the screen. Not in separate boxes like a normal group call. They were all sitting in the same room, lined up in chairs facing the camera. All silent. All staring straight ahead. The lighting was dim but enough to see their faces clearly. None of them were smiling. None of them were moving. It felt like looking at an audience that wasn't supposed to be there. I thought maybe it was some weird joke. Maybe actors. Maybe friends messing around. She angled the phone so they could see me clearly. No one waved. No one spoke. They just stared. I felt my throat go dry. I tried to smile like maybe this was some kind of test. She leaned closer to me and whispered that I was the first one who hasn't disappointed her. She said they didn't make it past dessert. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I looked back at the screen. One of the men blinked slowly. Another shifted slightly in his chair. They weren't frozen images. They were real. I asked who they were. She said they were her friends. I said it didn't look like they were her friends. She just kept smiling softly. She told me they were men she met the same way she met me. Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, dinner dates, conversations. She said she likes to keep records. I laughed nervously and said records of what? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked me how I felt being observed. I looked at the phone again. 20 pairs of eyes locked on me. No reactions, no judgment, just watching. She told me most of them disappointed her in small ways. Some checked their phones too much. Some talked about themselves too long. Some lied. She said she values consistency. I asked why they were all on a call together. She said she likes them to see what they missed. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I asked if they knew they were being shown to me. She tilted her head and said of course. But none of them spoke. Not one. I noticed something then. They all looked similar. Not identical, but similar build, similar age, similar haircut style. Like she had type. Like it was just the newest version. I asked where they were. She said safe. That word didn't help. The waiter came with a chocolate cake and placed it between us. For a second, everything felt almost normal again. The clink of plates, soft music in the background. She picked up her fork and cut a small piece. Then she held the phone closer to the cake so the men on the screen could see it. She said dessert is where she decides. Decides what? She didn't answer. Instead, she asked me if I thought I had disappointed her yet. I felt trapped in that booth. The restaurant was still full around us. Couples talking, laughing. No one paying attention. I tried to joke, said I hoped not. She studied my face for a long moment. Then she turned the phone back toward the men. For the first time, one of them spoke. Just one word. Almost. My skin felt tight. She muted the call after that and set the phone down. She told me she appreciates effort, that most men relax too soon. She said I hadn't. I didn't know what that meant. I asked if they were free to leave whenever they wanted. She didn't smile at that. She said they stay because they want to. I looked at the screen again. One of the men had a small bruise on his cheek. Another had dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept. They weren't smiling. They weren't nodding. Just watching. She finally took a bite of the cake. Then she pushed the plate toward me. She said, "Go ahead." I hesitated. She leaned closer and whispered that this is the part where most of them mess up. I asked how. She said impatience. I forced myself to take a small bite. She watched my reaction closely. Then she picked up the phone again and unmuted it. She told when I made it past dessert. There was no applause. No reaction. Just silence. Then the call ended. Screen went black. She placed her phone face down again. The rest of the night felt unreal. We paid, walked outside. She hugged me briefly and told me she would be in touch. I went home feeling like I had stepped into something I didn't understand. The next morning, I got a message from an unknown number. It was a photo. Me, sitting at the restaurant table, taken from behind her shoulder. In the corner of the photo, you could see her phone screen. And on it, 20 silent men watching. I don't use Uber the same way anymore. I don't trust the little car icon moving toward me on a map. I don't trust the driver photo. I don't even trust the license plate verification thing. Because that night, everything matched, and it was still him. I met him on Tinder on a random Sunday when I was bored, and I reading through profiles like they were job listings. His pictures were simple. Baseball cap, gym mirror shot, one with his niece at what looked like a birthday party. He had a short bio about working in logistics and liking spontaneous plans. We talked for a few days. Nothing intense. Just normal back and forth. He seemed relaxed, a little sarcastic. Not pushy. He never asked for my address. Never asked for anything weird. We agreed to meet at this outdoor night market downtown. Food trucks, string lights, loud music from random speakers. It felt safe because it was crowded. I like crowded for first dates. Too many witnesses. When I got there, he was leaning against one of the food trucks, scrolling on his phone. He looked exactly like his pictures. Maybe slightly taller than I expected. He smiled when he saw me and gave me a quick hug. The date itself wasn't bad. We walked around, tried different food. I spent $16 on dumplings. He paid $9 for churros and insisted I try one. We joked about how overpriced everything was. He asked about where I live, and I kept it general. Just said West Side, near the big grocery store. He didn't push. Around 10:30 p.m., I said I should probably head home. It had been a long week, and I was tired. He immediately offered to call me an Uber. I said I could order it myself. He insisted. Said it's what he always does. Said he likes making sure his dates get home safe. He said it casually, like it was a routine thing. I hesitated for a second, but then said okay. I figured it was easier. My phone battery was at 21%, so not terrible, but not great either. He took out his phone and ordered it. Showed me the screen so I could see the driver name on the car. Black Toyota Camry. Driver named Daniel. Reading 4.95. I watched the little car icon move closer on his screen. He stood next to me while we waited. Not too close. Just normal distance. People were still everywhere. Laughing, eating, walking past us. The car pulled up right in front of us. Black Camry. Same license plate as on the app. I checked twice. The driver window was slightly tinted, but I could see a silhouette in the front seat. He opened the back door for me like he was trying to be polite. I thanked him and got in. The inside of the car smelled faintly like air freshener. The dashboard lights were dim. The driver didn't turn around right away. I buckled my seatbelt and leaned forward slightly to say hi. That's when he turned his head. It was him. Same face, same baseball cap, same small scar near his eyebrow. For a second, my brain didn't process it. It felt like a glitch, like two images overlapping. I laughed awkwardly, thinking maybe he was joking. Maybe he switched with the driver as some weird surprise. Then I heard the locks click. All 4 doors. I reached for the handle out of instinct. Locked. He smiled in the rearview mirror and said round 2. My stomach dropped so fast it felt physical. I said this wasn't funny. He didn't respond to that. He just put the car into drive. I turned around to look out the back window. The night market was still right there. People everywhere. Lights. Noise. I tried to open the door again. Nothing. I told him to stop the car. He calmly said he was still technically completing the ride. I looked at his phone mounted on the dashboard. The Uber app was open. My name was on the screen as the passenger. The route was mapped out. But the driver photo was a different guy. Not him. I said the driver was supposed to be Daniel. He said Daniel exists. That didn't help. He turned onto a side street instead of heading toward the main road. I recognized immediately that it wasn't the fastest route to the west side. I asked why he wasn't following the map. He said he prefers his own routes. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. I grabbed my phone out of my bag and tried to open the Uber app. No service. 0 bars. Which made no sense because I had full signal at the market. I tried calling 911 anyway. Call failed. He glanced at me through the mirror and said tunnels mess with reception. We weren't in a tunnel. We were just on a darker street with fewer lights. I started thinking fast. I looked at the door lock button on my side, pressed it repeatedly. Nothing changed. He said child lock. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I asked what he wanted. He said he just didn't like how the night ended. He said I left too soon. He said round 2 is where things get interesting. The car sped up slightly. I looked out the window, trying to recognize where we were. Warehouses. Closed storefronts. Barely any traffic. I thought about jumping out, but we were moving too fast. I tried texting my friend anyway. Message not delivered. He kept talking in a calm voice, saying first impressions are misleading, saying people don't give enough chances. I asked if he did this often. He didn't answer directly, just said he invests time and expects returns. I noticed then that the back seat didn't have the usual handles above the doors. No way to grip onto anything. I scanned the front seats. There was a small camera mounted near the rearview mirror, pointed toward me. I asked what that was for. He said documentation. My chest felt tight. I realized something else. If he ordered the ride from his account, then technically he was the one being charged. I wasn't in control of the trip at all. I looked at the license plate through the windshield reflection. It did match the app, which meant he had access to that car. Either he was the driver under a different name or he had switched accounts somehow. I remembered him saying he worked in logistics. He suddenly slowed down. We were at a red light. I looked around desperately. 1 gas station on the corner. 2 cars waiting in the opposite lane. I unbuckled my seatbelt quietly. My hand hovered near the door handle. The light turned green. The car moved again. I felt tears starting to form, but I forced myself to stay calm. Panic wouldn't help. He said I was quiet now. He said most people panic by this point. Most people. That word stuck with me. He turned into what looked like an empty parking lot behind a closed supermarket. The lights were off. No other cars. He put the car in park, but didn't turn off the engine. I reached for the door again. Still locked. He turned fully in his seat to face me. His expression wasn't angry. It was almost curious. Like he was observing a reaction. I told him I wouldn't tell anyone, that I just wanted to go home. He studied my face for a long moment. Then he reached forward and pressed something near the steering wheel. The locks clicked open. I didn't wait. I threw the door open and ran. I didn't look back. I ran across the parking lot, around the building, toward the main road. I flagged down the first car I saw and begged them to let me in. They did. When I finally looked back at the parking lot from the safety of that stranger's car, the black Camry was gone. Later that night, when I finally got signal back and opened the Uber app, the trip was marked as completed. Driver named Daniel. Rating prompt waiting. There are things about me that don't exist online. At least I thought there were. I'm not big on posting childhood memories or random personal details. My Instagram is just gym photos, a few travel shots, food. Nothing deep, nothing vulnerable. I'd always figured that if it's not online, it's safe. I was wrong. I matched with her on Tinder on a random Tuesday night when I couldn't sleep. She didn't have a lot of pictures, just 3. One close-up selfie, one of her sitting on a balcony at night, and one blurry photo of her holding a coffee cup. Her bio was short. She wrote that she has a good memory and hates repeating herself. I remember thinking that was kind of funny. We talked for about a week before meeting. She was easy to text. Quick responses, smart comments, remembered little details from earlier conversations. If I mentioned I had a meeting at 3 p.m., she would ask how it went without me bringing it up again. I thought that was a green flag, someone paying attention. We decided to meet at a small bookstore cafe on the east side. It's one of those places that smells like old paper and coffee at the same time. Wooden tables, soft music, big windows facing the street. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting in the corner with a cup of tea. She looked exactly like her photos. Maybe even better. Darker hair than I expected, tied back loosely. Calm face, steady eyes. She stood up and hugged me briefly. Normal. Nothing weird. We sat down and started talking. At first, it was just normal first date stuff. Work, hobbies, where we grew up. I told her I grew up in a small suburb about 40 minutes away. She nodded and asked if I missed it. I said not really. Then she asked if that's where I had my childhood dog. I froze for a second. I hadn't mentioned a dog. I asked what she meant. She said the golden retriever, the one named Max. My heart skipped. Max died when I was 14. I'd never posted about him. Never mentioned him on Tinder. I don't even have old photos of him online. I laughed awkwardly and asked how she knew that. She just smiled and said she listens. I told myself maybe I had mentioned it without realizing, maybe during texting. We kept talking. A few minutes later, she asked if my knee still hurts sometimes when it rains. I felt my stomach drop. I have a small scar on my right knee from when I fell off my bike in 3rd grade. It's not obvious unless you're looking for it, and I definitely never talk about it. I asked what she was talking about. She looked at my leg under the table and said the scar on the right side. I instinctively pulled my leg back. She tilted her head slightly and said it happened on a gravel driveway, right? My mouth felt dry. I asked her straight up how she knew that. She didn't answer immediately, just sipped her tea. Then she changed the subject and asked about my 3rd grade teacher. I said I barely remember 3rd grade. She said her name was Mrs. Halpern. My chest felt tight. That was her name. I hadn't thought about her in years. I asked if we somehow went to the same school. She said no. She said she just knows things. I started going through possibilities in my head. Mutual friends. Background checks. Maybe she somehow found old school yearbooks online. But that still wouldn't explain the dog's name, the knee scar, random details like that. I asked if she had looked me up online. She nodded slightly and said everyone is online. I said none of that is online. She leaned forward and lowered her voice a little and said you'd be surprised what people leave behind in trash. My brain didn't immediately process that. I asked what she meant. She said receipts, envelopes, old forms, grocery lists, medication labels, anything with a name or address on it. I stared at her. She continued calmly. She said most people don't shred anything. They just toss it. Bills, school papers, vet records. Vet records. I felt like the air was getting thinner. Max had old vet documents. My mom used to throw them out when cleaning. I haven't lived at my parents' house in years. I asked if she was joking. She shook her head slightly. She said people throw away more than they think. Old notebooks, childhood drawings with names written at the top, birthday cards with dates and family member names. My mind started racing. A few months ago, I cleaned out a box from my parents' garage. Old school stuff. Random papers. I threw a lot of it away in my apartment dumpster. I asked her if she had gone through my trash. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just said information is everywhere if you're patient. I felt exposed in a way that's hard to describe, like my entire past was laid out in front of her without my permission. I asked how she even found where I live. She said mail is helpful. My heart started pounding. I get packages delivered all the time. Amazon boxes with my full name on them. I usually break them down and toss them in the recycling bin outside my building. She mentioned the brand of protein powder I use. I hadn't told her that either. She mentioned the pharmacy I go to. She mentioned the color of my childhood bedroom walls. Blue. I haven't seen that room in years. I asked how far back she had gone. She said far enough. I looked around the cafe. People reading books, typing on laptops, completely unaware of what was happening at our table. I felt like I was sitting across from someone who had read my entire life like a file. I asked why. She said she likes to understand people fully before deciding if they're worth keeping. Keeping. That word stuck. I asked what happens if they're not. She smiled faintly and said she moves on. I tried to keep my voice steady and asked if she's done this before. She said everyone leaves something behind. I asked if she had been near my apartment. She didn't answer directly, just said your building has weak lighting near the dumpsters. I felt sick. I thought about every night I took trash out without thinking. Every time I left a package box sitting there with my name printed in bold. She reached into her bag slowly. I tensed up. She pulled out a small folded piece of paper. She slid it across the table. I opened it. It was a photocopy of an old school worksheet. My name at the top in messy third-grade handwriting. The date. Mrs. Halpern written in red ink. I didn't even know that paper still existed. I looked up at her. She was watching my reaction carefully. She said people think privacy is about passwords. She said it's not. I didn't know what to say. I felt like my skin didn't belong to me anymore, like she had access to parts of my life that were supposed to be forgotten. I asked if she still had other things. She nodded. She said she keeps records. I stood up abruptly and said I needed air. She didn't stop me. I walked out of the bookstore cafe into the street. My hands were shaking. I felt like every trash bin I passed was watching me. Later that night, when I got back to my apartment, I checked the dumpster area. It was empty. Too empty. No loose papers. No torn envelopes. Nothing. Just clean black bins. And sitting neatly on top of one of them was an old photo of me and Max. A photo I was sure I had thrown away months ago. I used to sleep with my curtains half open because I liked the city lights. I don't anymore. This happened 3 months ago, and I still check my windows before I turn off the lights. Not just locked. Covered. Completely covered. I matched with him on Tinder during finals week when I was stressed and wanted a distraction. His profile was normal. Maybe too normal. Clean cut, short brown hair, soft smile. He had a picture of himself hiking and one of him holding a camera. I remember that detail clearly now. At the time, I thought it was kind of cool. Photography is harmless. Creative. We talked for about 10 days before meeting. He wasn't overly intense, just steady. Asked about my classes, my job, what I do on weekends. He seemed genuinely interested. He would remember small things I mentioned, like my favorite coffee order or the fact that I hate mushrooms. We met at a small bar near campus. Nothing fancy. Sticky floors, neon signs, cheap drinks around $7 each. I felt safe because it was close to my apartment and always crowded. He looked exactly like his pictures. Maybe a little taller. He smiled easily and made good eye contact. He was calm in a way that felt grounding. The date went well. We talked for hours. He told me about his photography hobby. Said he likes capturing candid moments, people in their natural environment. I told him that sounded interesting. He said posed photos are boring. He prefers real life. I didn't think anything of it. Around midnight, he asked if I wanted to go back to his place to see some of his work. I hesitated for a second, but then said okay. I had already shared my location with my roommate. I figured it was fine. His apartment was about 15 minutes away. Older building, 3rd floor, no elevator. The hallway smelled faintly like cleaning supplies and something else I couldn't place. Inside, his place was neat, almost to me. Minimal furniture. Gray couch, glass coffee table, bookshelf with maybe 10 books total. The walls were mostly bare. He offered me water. I said yes. While he was in the kitchen, I looked around. That's when I noticed the first photo. It was framed on a small side table near the couch. I walked closer. It was me. Not a selfie. Not something from social media. It was a photo of me sitting at my desk in my bedroom. My back was to the window. My hair was up in a messy bun. I was reading something on my laptop. The lighting was soft, natural. It looked professional, like something from a magazine. My heart started pounding so fast it felt like it was in my throat. I stared at it, trying to process what I was seeing. Maybe it just looked like me. But no. It was my room, my desk, the small plant I keep near the window, the blue blanket on my bed in the background. He walked back into the living room holding a glass of water and saw me looking at it. He didn't look surprised. He just set the glass down calmly. I asked him what that was. He said it's one of his favorites. My hands started shaking. I walked further into the room. There were more. 3 on the wall near the hallway, 2 on a shelf by the TV, all framed. All professional quality. All of me. One was me standing by a window brushing my hair. One was me lying on my bed scrolling on my phone. One was me changing into a hoodie, mid-motion, unaware. Every single one was taken through my bedroom window. I knew because the angle was slightly elevated, like from across the street, and the reflection of one of the frames, I could see part of the building opposite mine. My stomach dropped. I asked how he got those. He said he told me he likes candid photography. I felt dizzy. I asked how long he had been taking them. He said a few weeks. A few weeks. We had only matched 10 days ago. I realized then that he had been watching me before we ever spoke. I asked how he knew which window was mine. He said it wasn't hard. I have fairy lights around the frame. They're visible from the street. I felt exposed in a way that made my skin feel tight. I remembered all the nights I walked around my room thinking I was alone, changing, stretching, dancing to music with my headphones on. I asked if he had been inside my building. He said no. He prefers distance. Distance. I walked closer to one of the frames. The quality was insane. Sharp focus. Perfect lighting. Not like something taken on a phone. This was a real camera. Zoom lens. I asked where he took them from. He said there's a parking garage across from my apartment. Top level has a clear view straight into my window. My heart felt like it was about to explode. I had never even looked up at that garage. He walked over and stood next to me, looking at the photos like they were art. He said he likes the way I move when I think no one is watching. I stepped away from him. I asked why he framed them. He said because they're important. Important how? He didn't answer that directly. Instead, he asked if I wanted to see more. I said no. He walked down the hallway anyway and opened a door. It was a small room with nothing but a desk and a computer. On the wall above the desk were even more photos. Dozens. Different nights, different outfits, different positions in my room. Some with my curtains fully open, some half closed. I noticed something that made my chest feel tight. In one of the photos, I was looking directly toward the window. I had no memory of seeing him, but in that shot, it looked like I was almost making eye contact with the lens. He said that one is his favorite. I felt sick. I asked if anyone else had seen these. He said no, they're just for him. I thought about my roommate. Her bed is on the opposite side of the room, not near the window. He probably couldn't see her. I asked what he planned to do with them. He said nothing, just appreciate them. Like they were paintings. I realized then that this wasn't random. He had chosen me, studied my routine, waited for the right moment to match with me online. I asked if he had planned the date. He nodded slightly. He said it's easier to approach someone once they feel like they chose you. My whole body felt cold. I backed toward the living room. He didn't try to stop me. He just watched. I grabbed my bag from the couch. He said I don't have to be embarrassed. He's seen everything already. That sentence made my stomach twist. I told him to delete them. He tilted his head slightly and said he keeps backups. Backups. I walked to the door and tried to open it. It wasn't locked. I stepped into the hallway and didn't look back. I ran down the stairs out of the building into the street. When I got to my apartment, I didn't go inside right away. I stood across the street and looked up at my window. The fairy lights were on. My curtains were half open. And across from me, at the top level of the parking garage, I could see a faint silhouette near the edge, holding something long and dark in front of his face. I always bring my own food to parties. I always ask waiters twice. I always check labels even if I bought the same thing 100 times. When you're deathly allergic to peanuts, you don't get lazy. You don't risk it. You don't assume people remember. I told her that before we even met. We matched on Tinder on a random Friday night. Her profile was simple. A couple selfies, one picture of her hiking, one with a dog. Her bio said she likes cooking for people she cares about. That line stood out to me. We talked for a few days. She was easy to text. Kind of dry humor. Asked good questions. She asked about my job, my hobbies, random childhood stuff. I told her pretty early that I have a severe peanut allergy. Not mild. Not uncomfortable. Severe. The kind where I carry an EpiPen everywhere and still get nervous eating out. She replied with a simple got it. She even asked follow-up questions. How bad is it? What happens? How fast? I told her my throat closes. My chest tightens. It can happen within minutes. I told her I've been hospitalized before. She said that sounds scary. I thought that was that. We met at a small Thai restaurant downtown. It was her suggestion. I usually avoid Thai because of cross-contamination risk, but she said she called ahead and made sure they could accommodate allergies. That felt thoughtful. When we sat down, she told the waiter about my allergy before I could even say anything. She was specific. No peanuts. No peanut oil. No cross-contact. The waiter nodded and said they'd take it seriously. I remember feeling relieved, like she actually listened. Dinner was good. Conversation flowed. She laughed at my dumb stories. She asked about my college years. I started to relax. I noticed she barely touched her food, just picked at it. I asked if it was okay. She said she wasn't that hungry. After dinner, she suggested we go back to her place for dessert. She said she had made something herself. Peanut-free, obviously. I hesitated for a second, but then agreed. She'd been careful all night. I felt safe. Her apartment was in a newer building, 4th floor. Clean hallway, bright lights. Inside, it smelled like vanilla candles. She had a small kitchen island with 2 stools, a couch facing a big tub. Everything looked tidy. She went into the kitchen while I sat at the island. I watched her from where I was sitting. She opened the fridge, took out a small cake on a white plate. It looked like chocolate. She placed it in front of me and said she made sure it was safe. I asked what was in it. She listed ingredients: flour, cocoa, eggs, sugar, butter. No peanuts. I asked again that she was sure. She nodded. I took a small bite. It tasted normal. Rich chocolate. Nothing unusual. We kept talking while I ate. I finished the slice in about 5 minutes. Then, maybe 2 minutes later, I felt it. That slight itch in the back of my throat. At first, I told myself it was anxiety. Sometimes if I overthink it, I imagine symptoms. But then my tongue started tingling. My chest felt tight. I swallowed, and it felt wrong, like something was swelling. I looked at her and told her something wasn't right. She just watched me. I stood up, my heart pounding. I reached into my pocket for my EpiPen. I always carry it. My fingers felt clumsy. My breathing got heavier, like the air was thick. I asked her if she was sure there were no peanuts. She said calmly that she needed to see if I was dramatic. It took a second for that to register. My vision started to blur slightly at the edges. I asked what she meant. She said some people exaggerate allergies for attention. She wanted to see if I was one of them. My throat felt like it was closing. I pulled out the EpiPen and tried to steady my hand. She didn't move to help. She just leaned against the counter, watching. I stabbed the EpiPen into my thigh like I've practiced 100 times. Held it there. My breathing was getting worse. My chest tight. Each inhale felt shallow. I told her to call 911. She didn't move. She said if I was truly allergic, the pen should handle it. My skin felt hot. My ears were ringing. I grabbed my phone from the counter, but my fingers were shaky. I dropped it. She picked it up. For a second, I thought she was going to help. Instead, she placed it on the other side of the counter, just out of reach. My knees felt weak. I tried to move toward it, but my legs felt unstable. I asked her why she would do this. She said she doesn't like weakness. Weakness. I could feel my throat narrowing more. Swallowing was painful. Breathing louder. I stumbled toward the door. She didn't block me. She just watched. I managed to get into the hallway. My vision was tunneling. I slammed my fist against a neighbor's door. I don't even remember what I said. Probably nothing coherent. The door opened. A middle-aged man stared at me, confused. I tried to point to my throat. He reacted fast, pulled me inside, called emergency services. I collapsed onto his floor. The next clear memory I have is waking up in a hospital bed. My throat was sore, chest tight but stable. A nurse told me I was lucky. The EpiPen slowed it down, but I still needed more treatment. The police came to ask questions. I told them everything. They went to her apartment. She told them she thought it was a mild allergy, that she didn't think it was serious. They found peanut oil in her kitchen, open on the counter. I read the report later. She admitted she added a small amount to the cake batter, just to test, to see if I was dramatic. I haven't been on Tinder since. Sometimes when I eat something new, even if I've checked it 5 times, I feel that phantom itch in my throat. And I remember the way she leaned against the counter, calm, watching, like my breathing was just another thing to evaluate. I didn't think much when he mentioned the basement. He said he had turned it into a creative studio, and at first I pictured a simple art space. Canvases, a desk with sketchbooks, maybe some mood lighting. Nothing about it made me nervous until I stepped inside. We matched on Tinder during the middle of summer. His profile was ordinary. A few selfies, one of him at a coffee shop, another hiking. His bio said he likes photography and collecting unique things. I thought that was fine. I've always liked people with hobbies, harmless hobbies. We texted for about a week before deciding to meet. He suggested coming over so I could see his studio project. I hesitated, but it was early evening and I figured I'd stay alert. My apartment is small, but I always trust my instincts. I texted a friend my location just in case. His place was in an older duplex near the outskirts of the city. Outside looked normal. Paint peeling a little, wind chimes swaying in the faint breeze. A cat lazily sitting on the stoop. Inside smelled faintly of varnish and something else I couldn't place. Maybe dust, maybe old carpet. He led me down to the basement. The stairs creaked, paint chipped off the railing. My stomach twisted a little, but I tried to brush it off. When I reached the bottom, my first thought was that it was more spacious than I expected. Walls painted white, fluorescent lighting humming faintly. But then I noticed what lined the walls. Hundreds of ID cards and purses. Every card laminated, hanging neatly in rows. Every purse pinned or hooked to the wall. Some small, some designer. I froze. He said they were X's, and he smiled. Just a small, casual smile, as if this explained everything. My mind raced. I started naming the obvious questions. How did he get all these things? Did they know? Is this legal? But my voice was caught in my throat. I couldn't speak. He walked past me slowly, pointing out the setup like he was giving me a tour. He said each section had a different city, different years. The level of detail made my skin crawl. This wasn't a casual collection. It was methodical. Obsessive. I noticed the lighting was brighter near one wall. The cards there were new. Fresh, like from last month. Some had photos. Some just had names. Purses looked untouched, immaculate, as if they had been stored for display. He walked back toward the stairs and gestured for me to follow. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed at me to run. The door upstairs slammed suddenly, making me jump. He didn't acknowledge it. He said the studio needs privacy, that upstairs doors sometimes get stuck and close on their own. I wanted to believe him. I tried to take it all in. Each ID card had a name I didn't recognize. Some had small notes on them, written in his handwriting. Birthdays, favorite colors, hobbies. Details I thought only the person or their closest friends would know. He moved to a desk in the corner. There were photo albums. He opened one, showing me neat rows of photos. Dates scribbled at the bottom. Him smiling next to exes, holding purses, ID cards beside him. I realized then that some of the faces matched the cards on the walls. He said he likes to remember people fully. The past matters, he said. I didn't know what to say. My pulse was racing. I noticed a pile of envelopes near the desk. I peeked inside. They were letters. Some addressed to him, some from the women themselves. Some torn open, some carefully folded, some with receipts inside. A small notebook detailed dates, locations, times. He kept talking about his process, how he organizes everything, how he documents interactions. I tried to nod without looking too horrified. The more he explained, the heavier the air felt, like the basement was alive with the stories of everyone who had been there. I thought about how many people had unknowingly become part of this. I moved toward the stairs. Maybe I could leave without drawing attention. He walked up behind me, lightly touched my shoulder, said he likes when visitors appreciate the craft. I didn't respond, my throat dry. My fingers clenched the railing. The lights flickered. I thought it was the old wiring. But then, in the corner near the newest IDs, a small camera caught my eye. What I hadn't noticed before. I froze. He followed my gaze, said it was part of the studio. Records the experience of seeing the collection. My mind was spinning. I imagined the camera pointed at me, cataloging me as just another visitor, like I was already being added to a ledger somewhere in his mind. He walked back to the wall of the purses, lifted one slightly, said it belonged to someone he liked for their energy, another for their smile. The categories felt arbitrary, yet terrifyingly precise. I realized that the upstairs door was still shut, hard. There was no one else in the house. I felt trapped, like the basement wasn't just a studio. It was a shrine, a vault, a trap. He noticed me backing up toward the stairs, said I don't need to be scared. Most people leave quietly, but I wanted to be loud. I wanted to be anywhere else. My hands shook as I reached for the railing. My eyes darted to the camera again, to the walls, to the desk with envelopes. Every surface seemed to hum with intention, obsession, meticulousness. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I climbed the stairs slowly, turning just once to see him standing at the bottom, calm, observing, no expression. The flickering fluorescent light cast shadows that made the ID cards and purses seem like faces staring at me. I reached the top. The door was still stuck slightly. I tugged it hard. It swung open. I ran into the hallway. I paused outside the apartment building, gasping, trying to make sense of it. I thought about how methodical it all was. How patient he must have been to gather everything, plan the studio, wait for me. I realized then that if he could be this organized, this detached, this calm while cataloging his exes, he could wait for the right moment for anyone else. I didn't look back. I called an Uber from the street. My hands were shaking too much to type fast, so I just pressed the request button and stared at the building. I thought about the ID cards and purses, the letters, the camera, how easily someone could become part of his system without realizing it. I kept replaying the way he described each item, not as memorabilia, not as stories, but as evidence of patterns, traits, people, like he was studying human behavior, keeping trophies. I told myself I would never go back. I would never look at Tinder profiles the same way again. I still check my apartment doors, still check that nothing has been moved. I sleep lightly. And sometimes, when a wind slams a door upstairs in my building, my first thought isn't the wind. It's the basement, the walls, the collection, and the way he might be calmly cataloging patiently for the next visitor. I never thought a night of casual drinking and swiping on Tinder could end up like this. Honestly, I just wanted a distraction after finals week. It was late summer, sticky air, streetlights reflecting off wet pavement because it had rained earlier. That's when I matched with her. Her profile was simple. 3 pictures. A selfie in front of a bookstore, one on a trail in the woods, and another holding a coffee cup. Bio said she liked seeing patterns in chaos and collecting odd memories. I thought it was cute, a little cryptic but not off-putting. We started texting casually, light teasing, small jokes, late-night discussions about favorite books and movies. After a few days, she suggested meeting at a small cafe near her apartment. Nothing fancy. Dim lights, wooden tables, the kind of place with a faint smell of burnt espresso. It felt safe, normal. She wasn't pushy, didn't try to make me feel rushed or uncomfortable. We talked for hours. I mentioned that I occasionally like to clean out my apps and accounts, Tinder included. She perked up when I said that. Suggested I delete it for good if I was serious about seeing her again. I joked that I could, but it felt unnecessary. She leaned in, calmly insisted that I do it, right there in front of her. I laughed nervously, but she didn't smile. She held her phone up, said she'd delete it too. I hesitated. Something in her tone made me pause. The cafe was quiet, except for faint jazz in the background. My fingers hovered over the app. Then I did it. Watched my Tinder icon disappear. She did the same on her phone. For a moment, I felt relieved. A little thrill, like a shared secret. She smiled slightly, that small half-smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We left the cafe together. Night was warmer now, the wet pavement reflecting the orange of street lamps. We walked, talking. She carried her phone casually, said nothing about the deletion. It was just normal, until she suddenly tapped her phone and it restarted by itself. The screen went black, then the logo appeared. I thought it was coincidence, maybe a glitch. Then the home screen appeared. Tinder, still installed. Her profile was there, unchanged. Except below her name it said, matched with 37. I asked if that was normal. She shook her head, a slight smirk on her lips. She tapped the app, restarted it. Same thing, matched with 37. I assumed it was some app glitch. I suggested turning it off, restarting again. She did. No change. The number didn't make sense. She swiped to show me her matches. The list was blank. No one there, just the number. We kept walking. I couldn't stop looking at her phone. It felt wrong. Unnatural. Like a puzzle I wasn't supposed to see. She didn't seem worried. In fact, she seemed amused. I started noticing small things. Every time she unlocked her phone, the number changed slightly. Once it said 38, then 39, then back to 37. I asked her what it meant. She didn't answer directly. Just said that some connections are persistent. Some patterns don't fade just because you delete them. I laughed nervously. Tried to shrug it off. Told myself it was just some bug in the app. But a cold pit started forming in my stomach. We reached her apartment building. Modern, glass doors, lobby with faint humming air conditioning. She invited me up. Said she wanted to show me something interesting about digital patterns. I hesitated, remembered the cave, the glitching phone. But curiosity mixed with unease pushed me inside. Inside her apartment, everything was minimal. White walls, concrete floors, soft lighting. She handed me her phone, showed me the Tinder screen. Watch. She swiped to delete. Icon disappeared. Restarted the phone. Tinder reappeared, her profile. Matched with 37. I felt my throat tighten. She picked up my phone next. Said we should test mine too. I hadn't touched Tinder in months, but she insisted. My fingers trembled as I deleted the app. Watched it vanish. She restarted it. It reappeared. My profile. Matched with 37. I tried again. Same result. We repeated it several times. Each time, number stuck at 37. Then she tilted her phone so the screen reflected in the glass wall. The number looked different in the reflection. 72. I blinked. She laughed softly. Quiet, low, amused. Not menacing exactly, just certain. I started pacing, trying to make sense of it. The number wasn't consistent. Not logical. No one else on the list, no notifications, nothing. Just her profile, mine, and the number. She put the phone down, said she collects patterns, likes to see what persists, what comes back, what can't be erased. I looked around her apartment. Shelves with small trinkets. Nothing alarming at first glance, but the way she said, what can't be erased stuck with me. We sat on the couch. I tried to focus on anything else. My hands kept twitching. Every time I glanced at the phone, the number changed. 37 42 31. Then she did something that froze me. She tapped my profile picture in the app, held it, and the screen seemed to ripple slightly. The number jumped to 53. I realized then that it wasn't just a glitch. This was deliberate. Somehow she had made a system that ignored deletion, that tracked us, all of us, our digital traces. I asked her how. She said she couldn't tell me everything. Some things are better left unexplained. But I could feel it. My mind started racing. The number meant connections, interactions, people I didn't know. Maybe it was me, maybe her, maybe something bigger. My phone buzzed. A notification. Nothing from the app. Just a blank message. Empty. The timestamp changed every few seconds. I didn't touch it. She didn't touch it. I started to panic. Told myself I was overreacting. Phones glitch sometimes. Apps have bugs. But then, when we both locked our phones and placed them on the table, the screens lit up again. Both phones, same time. Same number, 37. I realized the number didn't represent anything I knew. It was arbitrary, impossible to trace, and yet persistent, like a shadow following me. I asked her if anyone else had noticed. She said no. Most people don't stay long enough to see the patterns repeat. Some give up, some ignore it, some panic like I was now. I wanted to leave, but my legs felt heavy. The air seemed thicker. Even the apartment itself felt active, like it was aware. She leaned back, calm, watched me. Phone resting on her lap, face glowing faintly from the screen. She said patterns are alive if you pay attention. I kept checking my own phone. Every swipe, every restart. Her profile stayed. Number changing. 37, 44, 36. I don't understand how. I can't explain it. All I know is that every time I think I'm free, it comes back. Hours later, I finally left. Tried to shake it off. Tried to rationalize. I got home, turned on my phone, logged out of everything. Deleted apps. Cleared caches. The number waited. 37. Even now, when my phone restarts by itself, when apps update automatically when I glance at Tinder or a similar app, I see her profile. Matched with 37. I don't swipe. I don't open. I just see it. Every time. I thought ghosting him would be simple. I matched with him on Tinder late spring, just after moving into my new apartment. It was small, one bedroom with a balcony that overlooked the alley behind the building. Cozy, cheap rent, all I needed for the summer before grad school started. He was fine at first. Texts were casual, flirty, a little funny. Met him once for coffee near the Riverwalk. Didn't feel any sparks. I didn't even like coffee that much, but it was convenient. After that, I stopped replying. No explanations, just silence. I assumed he'd eventually get the hint. I didn't block him immediately. Sometimes I like to leave things open-ended, subtle exits. A week later, I woke up to a notification, a voicemail. Odd, because I hadn't saved his number. I pressed play. It was me. My own voice. I froze. I could recognize it anywhere. The tone, that slight crack in my laugh, the way I sighed when I'm annoyed. It was me, talking to myself inside my apartment that night. Words I hadn't said to anyone, just thinking aloud while unpacking boxes, fumbling with the blender, humming a tune from the radio. I thought it was a glitch. Maybe a misdirected file, wrong number. Deleted it. Ignored it. Then the next day, another message. Another recording. This time me talking about groceries, which I had done alone. I replayed it over and over. Footsteps. Creaks. The faint hum of the fridge. All my own apartment sounds. Nothing could explain it. I panicked a little. I double-checked locks, doors, windows. Everything intact. No sign of forced entry. Nothing missing. Nothing unusual. A few days passed. Then more voicemails. Me singing in the shower. Laughing at a show on my laptop. Talking on the phone to my roommate, except my roommate wasn't in town. Every recording was timestamped the moment it happened. Real time. I changed my phone number. Didn't help. New number, same messages, same voice, same apartment sounds. I started checking for cameras, smoke detectors, Wi-Fi plugs, appliances, even the thermostat. Nothing. All empty, clean. The sense of being watched grew. I rearranged furniture, covered windows at night. Lights on timers. Still, voicemails kept arriving. I didn't answer any calls, didn't engage, just listened, trembled, and deleted. I started sleeping with my phone across the room, flashlight on, checking every corner before closing my eyes. Footsteps in the hall. Maybe. Shadows on walls. Maybe. Every sound amplified. One night, I came home late, exhausted, keys in hand. Phone buzzed as I stepped inside. Voicemail. I didn't press play. Waited until morning. When I finally did, it was me again, talking to the air, describing exactly how I had walked from the door to the couch, where I dropped my bag, how I kicked off my shoes. It hit me. Someone had been inside. Someone had recorded me without me seeing. I considered the neighbors, the maintenance guy, the delivery people. No, they wouldn't know my routines in such detail. The recordings weren't brief. They were full conversations, full monologues, even the small, quiet murmurs I didn't think anyone could hear. I started documenting. Every recording, every timestamp, every detail. My phone, laptop, old tablets. Anything that could help me track patterns. But it didn't make sense. The voicemails were perfectly timed with my own activities. How could anyone know so precisely? I thought about cameras again. Hidden, tiny, maybe inside my walls. Impossible, I reasoned. But I tore open wall plates, outlets behind light fixtures. Nothing. I became obsessive. Notes, diagrams, maps of my apartment. Where I was when recordings came. Patterns emerged. They always knew when I was alone. Never when someone was with me. Never when I was outside. Always inside. Private, unguarded moments. The worst was the shower recordings. Walls steamed, tiles echoing. Nothing I could do to prevent it. Yet the messages arrived immediately, crystal clear, as if someone had been right there listening. I stopped answering texts, calls, didn't open the door without checking. Friends stopped coming over, confused by my sudden paranoia. But I couldn't stop. Each time my phone buzzed, I felt the apartment shrink around me. I considered moving. Called a friend in another city, packed boxes, thought about leaving everything behind. Then one night, I listened to a voicemail that made my blood run cold. I had been speaking quietly to myself, complaining about the noise from outside, about neighbors, about the wind rattling the window. At the very end of the recording, there was another voice. Quiet, familiar. His voice. I remembered him from Tinder from that coffee date, that week I ghosted him. Calm, casual, observing. My heart pounded. He hadn't said anything to me in months. No texts, no calls, just vanished. And now he was here somehow, capturing my every move. I ran to every window, peered outside. Dark streets, silent. No one, just me, the apartment, and the echoing reality that someone had been inside without me noticing. I called the police. They came, took fingerprints, dusted for prints. Nothing unusual. No signs of entry. They suggested maybe it was psychological. Paranoia. Stress. I wanted to argue, but I didn't. What proof could I show them? Voicemails. Audio can't prove who's behind it if no one saw them. I installed security cameras. All angles. Checked for motion. Heat sensors. Nothing. Recording stopped for a day. Then, new voicemails. The camera feed silent. My phone on airplane mode. Every sound came from inside. Every voice was mine. And his. I started sleeping lightly. Lights on. Phone in hand. Recording app open. Any sound, any creak, I froze, listening. But it never captured him. Only the voicemails. I tried to leave. Packed a bag. Drove hours away. New apartment. Different city. Different life. First night in the new place, phone buzzed. Voicemail. My own voice. Describing my arrival. Describing the route. Describing the small panic in my chest as I set down my bag. And at the very end, barely audible, the same calm, familiar voice. Him. I realized then there was no escape. The distance, the walls, the locks, the city, it didn't matter. Someone somehow had a way inside my private moments. Recording, cataloging, watching, waiting. I sit now in the living room, lights dimmed, phone across the room vibrating silently. I won't open the voicemails. I don't want to. The faint sound of my own voice replaying things I thought were private fills the room anyway. I don't know how long this will go on. I don't know if it ever stops. I just know that my own apartment, my own solitude, is no longer mine. I thought I had finally met someone normal. Tinder had been a string of weird dates, casual flings, and awkward coffee meetups. But then she showed up. She wasn't flashy, didn't try too hard, just laughed easily, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. Our first date ended with her walking me to my car, laughing at my terrible parking, and suggesting a second date. I agreed without hesitation. The second date was different. She said she wanted me to meet her parents. Honestly, I was surprised. Usually people wait months before that. She laughed when I mentioned it, told me they were chill and it would be fun. I didn't argue. The idea of meeting her parents, of feeling like part of something serious, was exciting. The house was in a quiet cul-de-sac. Big, older, with ivy crawling up the brick exterior. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine. Her parents greeted me warmly at the door, hugs, smiles, the usual small talk about traffic, work, and the neighborhood. They seemed normal, perfectly normal. Dinner was in a dining room with dark wood furniture and soft lighting. The table was set neatly, candles flickering, plates steaming with roasted chicken, vegetables, mashed potatoes. They toasted as soon as we sat, glasses clinking. The toast was simple but formal, to finally finding someone compatible. I remember feeling a little nervous. It was early in the date, everything still polite, but there was an underlying intensity in the way they looked at me, the way she held her hands over her lap, eyes bright. Then, after a few bites, her dad slid something across the table, a manila folder thick with papers. I picked it up, glanced inside. A contract. My first thought was a joke. Maybe it was part of some family tradition, a prank. The pages were formal, printed neatly, legal language dense, and uninviting. Clauses about commitment, expectations, restrictions. It felt like a legal agreement for marriage or partnership, except we hadn't even reached that point. I looked up. Her dad's expression was calm, composed, but there was something in his eyes that made me swallow hard. She smiled slightly, her expression unchanged, as if she'd expected this reaction. Her mom sipped her wine, eyes glinting faintly in the candlelight. The contract had clauses that were impossible to ignore. Details about weekly reports, curfews, phone monitoring, dietary regulations, even rules about friends I could associate with. The tone was precise, meticulous, almost clinical. It felt less like an agreement and more like a blueprint for controlling someone's life. I tried to keep my voice steady, to ask questions about what it meant, but the words felt heavy in my throat. Her dad leaned back, calm, explaining the importance of compatibility and commitment. That once someone agreed, it wasn't just about dating, it was about maintaining harmony, ensuring trust, making sure everyone knew their place. The dinner continued. I tried to eat, tried to focus on the chicken, the potatoes, even the pleasant scent of rosemary and garlic. But every bite felt like lead in my stomach. Every sip of wine bitter. The contract sat between us like a weight, its presence undeniable. She asked me to read the clauses carefully. I flipped through, the pages detailing expectations that made no sense for a second date meeting. Daily schedules, lists of chores, limitations on where I could go, instructions about social interactions. Each line more disturbing than the last. I realized then that this wasn't just about compatibility or family values. It was about control, ownership. A web I couldn't escape once I agreed. The calm, normal exterior of the house, the warmth of the candles, the laughter, it all felt like a stage, a performance. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe they were eccentric, maybe just overprotective. But the way they watched me, the precision of the language, the casual tone in which they treated life-altering clauses, it was unnerving. She reached across the table, touched my hand lightly, smiled. It was reassuring, but my gut told me something was off. She wanted me to sign, to commit, and I hadn't even agreed to a relationship yet. I flipped through more pages. There were clauses about financial disclosure, about privacy, even about emotional availability, described in strict, measurable terms. Obligations to report my moods, my interactions, my desires. Her dad watched me. Calm, patient, waiting. I excused myself briefly, said I needed water. In the hallway, my stomach churned. My mind raced. There was no normal excuse for a contract like this. The entire setup, the home, the dinner, the polite smiles, the toast, was a trap. I thought about leaving, just walking out, disappearing into the night. But the idea of confronting them, of refusing, of facing whatever consequences were implied in the contract, it made me hesitate. Back at the table, her mom poured more wine. The conversation resumed about books, movies, music. Normal topics, normal words, normal tones. But every so often her dad glanced at the folder. A subtle, almost imperceptible reminder of what was between us. The toast earlier wasn't just a toast. It was an introduction to a ritual I hadn't agreed to, a performance I was now trapped in. The candles flickered. The shadows stretched across the table, long and sharp. Every movement seemed calculated. She smiled at me, still charming, still warm, still familiar. But now I saw it differently. A veneer, a mask. Underneath, the depth of planning, control, precision. It wasn't affection. It was orchestration. I tried to think of a reason this could be normal. Maybe some family tradition, some ancient agreement, some eccentric legal requirement. But the clauses were specific to me, to my life, my habits, my choices. No one could enforce that without prior contact. They knew details I hadn't shared online, hadn't discussed in conversation. They had done their research, and the contract reflected it perfectly. I pushed the folder away slightly, tried to change the topic. The shift was subtle but noticeable. Her dad's gaze sharpened. Her mom's eyes followed. She leaned back, relaxed, watching. Everything quieted for a moment, tension heavy in the air. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, I said I needed to leave early. An excuse about work, an early meeting the next morning. The request felt trivial compared to the setup, but the weight of the contract made the words feel brave. They didn't protest, didn't argue, just nodded, smiles polite, calm, like they expected me to leave. The folder remained on the table. A warning, a promise, a lingering presence. Walking back to my car, I felt the summer air heavy, oppressive. The house behind me, ivy crawling up its walls, looked different now. Not warm, not inviting. Staged. Planned. I realized the toast, the candlelight, the polished table. It wasn't hospitality, it was a lure. A way to make signing feel reasonable. A performance of normalcy to cover something far more disturbing. I never texted her again. I never returned. The folder never left my mind. Every time I thought of the house, of the dinner, of that toast to compatibility, I felt that cold, heavy weight in my chest. Sometimes I wonder if anyone else ever sees the contract after a second date. If it's a test, a trap, a ritual repeated with others who seem normal, charming, human. I moved apartments shortly after. Quieter streets, fewer people around. No ivy crawling up brick walls. But in the back of my mind, that night lingers. The toast, the smiles, the contract sliding across the table. Sometimes I catch myself imagining the clauses, the lines, the meticulous language, and I think, for just a moment, about what would have happened if I'd signed. So I matched with this guy on Tinder, right? And at first it seemed normal. He had that whole awkward charm thing going on, kept sending these random memes, and we started texting late at night because we both worked weird hours. I figured it was just casual, maybe a little fun, nothing serious. But almost immediately his questions got off. Not like creepy in a "hey, are you alone" way, but really clinical. He'd ask stuff about my health, like if I'd had any surgeries, allergies, how often I get headaches, if I ever fainted, things you wouldn't normally tell someone you just met online. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe he was some kind of medical student or something, but he never mentioned studying medicine. Our first date was at this tiny cafe in a part of the city I didn't really go to, kind of on the edge of downtown where the streets are quiet and most places close early. I got there first and grabbed a booth by the window, watching the rain smear the streetlights into streaks of color. He showed up 20 minutes later with that nervous smile, like he was trying too hard to seem casual. We ordered coffee, but even sitting across from me, he kept asking me those same weird questions in person, like how my heart reacts to stress or if I've ever had trouble breathing when anxious. I laughed it off, said he was weird, and he smiled like he knew I was lying. The whole night felt off. I kept glancing at my phone because I felt this creeping unease, This tension, like the air in the room, was thicker than normal. I chalked it up to nerves, maybe too much coffee, maybe just him. But then he asked if I knew my blood type. I froze because why would anyone ask that? I said I didn't, and he didn't push it. Just smiled and said something about it being important to know. That should have been a red flag, but I ignored it. We ended up walking around after the cafe closed, streets wet and shiny under the city lights. I thought maybe fresh air would shake off the weirdness, but he kept turning the conversation back to my body, my health, and what I eat. It was subtle, almost casual, but I felt like he was trying to map me, like he was taking notes in his head. At some point, I thought I saw him jotting something down in a little notebook, but when I asked, he said it was just doodles. I didn't press it. A week later, we were texting, nothing crazy, just checking in. That's when it started getting really creepy. I noticed my Tinder notifications were weird. When I opened the app, my profile had been updated. My bio, which I swear I never touched, now listed my blood type. I double-checked. I had never added it. Never even thought about adding it. I freaked out and tried to change it back, but it kept reverting, like someone else had access. I tried to confront him about it, but he played it cool. Said he didn't do anything. Maybe it was a glitch. I wanted to believe him, but the gut feeling in my stomach was screaming otherwise. I started checking my phone more obsessively, looking for signs of tampering, strange apps, anything out of place. My email hadn't been hacked. No new logins. Nothing. But my Tinder, something had definitely accessed it, and I had no clue how. I stopped seeing him in person for a while, but he kept texting, keeping the conversation casual light. He'd ask about my day, my weekend plans, and then slip in little questions again. Nothing too direct, just casual enough that I didn't immediately freak out, but enough that it made me uneasy. Like he was testing me, seeing how much I notice, how much I give away. One night, I was at home scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself with music, when I noticed something in the background of a photo he'd sent me. I didn't see it at first, but there was a calendar pinned on the wall behind him, and on one of the dates, it had a circle with my initials. I zoomed in, looked closer, and underneath, there was a small scribble that looked like a time. I sent him a question about it, asking if it was just a random doodle, and he laughed it off, said I was reading too much into it. But I knew I wasn't. The next time we met, he picked a place in the suburbs this time, an old diner with flickering neon lights and vinyl booths. It felt like one of those diners that existed in the same time loop for decades, like nothing changed since the 70s. We sat down, and right away he started asking me about my sleep patterns, medications, allergies again, and how often I go to the doctor. It was the same line of questions as before, just more pointed. I realized he wasn't joking. He wanted details, precise details about my body. I tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, talk about movies, music, random stuff, but he'd always bring it back. He'd make little comments about blood, how rare certain types were, how some people were more compatible than others. I felt a knot in my stomach, like I was watching a storm form inside me, but I didn't know how to get out. Later that week, I woke up to a notification on my phone. My Tinder bio had changed again. This time, it wasn't just my blood type. It included my height, my weight, and the city I lived in. I screamed, dropped my phone, scrambled to check my email and security settings. Nothing. No hacks, no login attempts. Nothing. It was impossible. Someone had to have done it manually, and the only person who even remotely had access to the information was him. I started seeing him less, but the text didn't stop. He'd send random little questions like, "What's your heart rate right now?" or "How fast can you run to the nearest exit?" I thought I was losing my mind. I deleted the app, thinking maybe that would be the end, but somehow he still found a way to contact me. From another account? From my old one? I didn't know. Every time I deleted it, a new one popped up with the same smiley face and the same casual tone. I began checking my apartment obsessively. Locks, doors, windows. Nothing was broken. Nothing was out of place. But I had this feeling, this creeping certainty that he knew exactly where I was, exactly what I was doing. I stopped answering my phone sometimes, just letting calls go to voicemail. But he'd leave cryptic messages about checking vitals and making sure everything was normal. I didn't answer. I didn't want to, but the messages kept coming. I tried to tell friends, but they thought I was overreacting. He seemed normal when they met him, polite even, kind of quiet, but not creepy. Just a regular guy. I wanted to scream that it wasn't about how he looked. It was about how he accessed parts of me that weren't supposed to be public, details that weren't mine to share, and yet they were. My blood type, my height, my habits. How can someone know all that without being close to me? One day, I found something in my mailbox. Not letters, nothing official, just a small envelope with my name on it. Inside, there was a single printed page. On it were all the details he had asked me over the past month. Allergies, medications, the fainting thing I told him about on our first date, blood type, height, weight, city, even the way I brush my teeth in the morning. It was like a dossier, all neat, all typed, all mine, and I knew he had made it. No doubt. I confronted him finally via text because I didn't want to meet him in person. I told him to stop. Told him I didn't want contact. He responded casually, almost bored, saying, okay, no problem. But the next day, my Tinder bio had changed again. This time, it included my full medical history, every little thing he had asked me, and I hadn't added a word. I moved apartments after that, changed phones, deleted all my accounts, started using a different email, everything. I thought that would work. For a while it did. But then one night, a new Tinder notification popped up on my new phone. New account, same smile, same casual text style, and the first message he sent was my blood type. I can't use Tinder anymore. I can't trust apps. I can't even use my real email without checking obsessively. I still get texts sometimes, small questions, vague and clinical. Always about my health. Always about me. And I know one day he'll know everything. Not because I tell him, not because I add it, but because he's already found a way. It's not just scary, it's this constant crawl under your skin, like someone's cataloging your body without permission. I can't explain it. I can't stop it. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he wants beyond knowing. And honestly, I don't want to know. I met him on Tinder on a slow Tuesday night, scrolling while my dorm room smelled like leftover noodles and laundry detergent. He seemed normal at first, funny, a little awkward, smart without being showy. We texted for a few weeks, and it was nice. Easy. Like talking to someone who understood jokes I hadn't even said out loud. I thought that was enough to make me feel safe, that everything else would follow naturally. We decided to meet at this tiny rooftop cafe downtown, one of those places where the tables are all metal and the lights hang low, barely glowing over the skyline. I got there first and grabbed a corner table, the kind where you can see the city but nobody can see you completely. He arrived a few minutes later, smiling, carrying a camera. He didn't say much at first, just set his bag down and sat. The date started normal. Drinks, small talk, jokes about how we were probably the only people there under 30. I told myself to relax. After dessert, he insisted on taking a photo together. I laughed, said it wasn't necessary, but he pulled out his camera anyway. He wanted a candid shot, something natural, and I agreed, more out of habit than curiosity. The timer clicked, I leaned in, and the camera flashed. He looked at it, smiled faintly, and slid it into his bag without showing me. I didn't think much of it. Photos are normal, right? The week after that, I noticed weird things. My phone would act strange. Face ID would fail, random apps would open on their own. Sometimes my camera would turn on when I hadn't touched it. I chalked it up to glitches at first, hired from school, overthinking. But then I remembered the photo. I pulled it out of his bag when he left it on my desk for a minute to grab something, and the screen unlocked instantly when I held my phone over it. My stomach turned. That shouldn't be possible. I tried ignoring it, thought maybe it was coincidence, but it kept happening. Every picture of me, Polaroids, selfies, even screenshots of messages, could unlock everything. My phone, my laptop, apps I hadn't even installed yet. It was like the image had become a master key to my life. I deleted the photo, shredded it, flushed it down the toilet. It came back on my desk the next morning, clean, untouched. I started sleeping with it under my pillow. Then I noticed something worse. At school, at the library, on the bus, people started staring. Not casual glances, but long, measuring stares. Sometimes phones would flash as if recording. I tried ignoring it, but the tension followed me everywhere. I realized slowly that the photo wasn't just in my life, digitally. It had extended somehow, touched the real world, and maybe him too. I confronted him once, barely holding myself together. He didn't get defensive. He just smiled faintly, like he'd been waiting for me to notice. He never explained, never admitted anything. But I knew then, he had done something to that photo, to me, to my life, something I couldn't undo. Weeks passed. I couldn't take new pictures. I couldn't leave my apartment without feeling watched. Every reflection, every camera lens, every digital eye felt like it could be him observing, cataloging, controlling. I realized then that the photo was never just a picture. It was a tether, a mark, a link I couldn't break. One night, I tried to burn it. Flames licked the edges, blackened the paper, but the image stayed intact, eyes staring at me, unyielding. My phone buzzed, unlocked, and displayed a notification. A message I hadn't received from him, containing only that same photo. I deleted it. It reappeared. I shut off my phone completely. The image was still there, mocking me, perfect, untouchable. I moved apartments, changed phones, even tried going off social media entirely. Nothing mattered. Every time I thought I escaped, I would see it again. The flash of a camera, the faint glint of light on a screen, the weight of his eyes in memory. He had found a way to embed himself in me. And now I know, no matter where I go, no matter what I do, that photo exists somewhere, waiting, a shadow I can't escape. Even now, when I glance at mirrors or reflective surfaces, I see it. Not me, not him, but the ghost of that photo, the shadow he left behind, controlling, patient, relentless. The camera flash, the click of the shutter, the smile in the background, they never leave. And I know somewhere he's taking another photo of someone else, starting the cycle again, leaving a shadow that can't be erased. I thought it was going to be normal. Tinder dates never go perfectly, but I thought this one would at least be chill. I got there first, of course, because I always run early, and the place was this tiny rooftop bar that felt kind of hidden, like only locals knew about it. The city stretched out in front of me, a patchwork of lights and dark streets, and the wind was cold, but not enough to ruin the mood. I ordered a drink and tried to scroll through my phone, calming down from the nerves when I saw him. He looked just like his pictures, maybe a little taller, a little sharper in the jawline, but not enough to be scary. I smiled and waved when he spotted me from the stairs. He slid into the seat across from me and immediately started talking about random stuff. Nothing too serious, just the usual small talk, but I noticed something strange. His phone was always in his hand. He didn't put it down once, not even when the waiter came over. He'd glance at it, tilt it, type, tilt it again, and then look back at me. I thought maybe he was texting a friend, but the way he held it made my skin crawl a little. I tried to ignore it. As the date went on, I noticed people around us were staring. Not glancing casually like they were annoyed by the music, but staring. Directly at us. I checked behind me, in front of me, even at the tables on the far side of the rooftop. Everyone seemed to be watching, not talking, just watching. I laughed it off nervously, told myself it was coincidence, that maybe it was my imagination, but the feeling didn't go away. At one point, he tilted his phone slightly toward me, just a little, like he wasn't trying to show me anything, but I caught the screen. And then I saw it. I saw myself. Right there on his phone screen, framed perfectly in the camera, he was streaming. Live, and I hadn't agreed to it. Comments started flooding in, sliding across the screen like some digital flood. She's prettier than the last one. Finally, a good view. Can't believe she's here too. My stomach dropped. I wanted to grab the phone, smash it, run, anything, but my body froze. I couldn't move. My hands shook, my breath caught. I looked around, and some of the people staring were laughing quietly, nodding at the screen in his hand. Others were whispering into their phones, typing, streaming their own reactions. I realized then that this wasn't just some random live stream. This was a coordinated thing. I didn't know how many people were watching or for how long, but it felt like the whole city had eyes on me through his phone. I wanted to ask him why, to make him stop, but I couldn't even form words. He smiled at me, casual, like he wasn't doing anything wrong. He didn't even break his eye contact with me. It was terrifying, how normal he looked while something so wrong was happening. I started looking for a way out, scanning the rooftop for the stairs, the exit, anywhere I could disappear. But every time I shifted my eyes, someone else caught me. Someone else was watching. It was like moving made the spotlight stronger, and the comments kept coming, more rapid now, faster than my brain could process. Move closer to the light. She's nervous. Love it. Yes, exactly, right there. I thought about screaming, about yelling at the staff, about doing anything to make it stop, but my voice seemed to vanish. When I tried, it came out as a quiet whine that no one noticed. My chest tightened, and I realized my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. And still, he smiled, tilting the phone just slightly, keeping me framed perfectly, like a painting in some twisted gallery. Time blurred. I don't know if it was minutes or hours. Drinks arrived on the table I hadn't ordered. He didn't acknowledge them, just kept talking to me, watching my reactions, tilting the phone, adjusting it subtly. I noticed a few of the comments mentioned things I'd said about my life, small details I thought only he knew. It wasn't just my face on the screen. It was me, my habits, my personality, my little quirks. Everything. I realized then that this wasn't just a live stream. It was a performance, and I was trapped in it. The people around us, they weren't just watching. They were participating. Their eyes, their typing, their murmurs, all of it made me feel like I was being dissected, analyzed, rated, ranked. I wanted to disappear, to vanish into the night, but the rooftop felt small, crowded, alive with eyes. At some point, he leaned back, still holding the phone, and I noticed the angle changed. The camera caught the street below, the elevator shaft, the staircase. Every potential exit was visible. I understood then that I wasn't just being streamed in that moment. I was being watched for my escape, my reaction, every movement cataloged for whoever was on the other end of the feed. I thought about calling someone, anyone, but I didn't dare touch my phone. I didn't know if it was compromised too, if he could see it, if he had somehow anticipated that. The comments kept coming, faster now, almost feeding on my panic. She's shaking, can you see that? Yes, perfect. Move your hands. I tried to cover my face, hoping maybe obscuring myself would break the feed. But his hand was steady, the tilt precise, keeping my reactions in perfect view. I wanted to grab it, but he was too fast, too smooth. I felt like I was part of some machine, a machine I didn't understand that had been set up to use me, to observe me, to make me perform without choice. The worst part was how calm he seemed, like he wasn't streaming a human being in distress, like it was nothing, like it was normal. And I hated myself for thinking maybe this had been happening to others before me. That comment about prettier than the last one hit me like a punch in the gut. I wasn't the first, and somehow that made it worse. I realized I couldn't wait for the night to end. I had to move, had to escape. I calculated every step in my head, every possible angle, every shadow I could hide in. I started walking slowly toward the edge of the rooftop near the emergency stairs, my hands in my lap, my expression neutral, hoping to blend in. People's eyes tracked me, comments typed themselves in my imagination before I even imagined them. He noticed. Of course he noticed. He tilted the phone again, caught me in the frame, framed me perfectly even as I tried to vanish. My chest tightened, tears blurred my vision, and I realized that even if I made it down the stairs, even if I ran into the street, I didn't know if that ended it. The feed, the comments, the people, they were all connected to him. I finally reached the stairs, my legs shaking so badly I almost tripped. The phone stayed pointed at me the whole time. Comments kept flowing, words like knives slicing into me without touching me physically. I ran down the stairs, my breaths ragged, echoing off the concrete walls. I thought maybe the sound would cover my panic, maybe it would hide me. But when I burst out onto the alley below, I realized the neon from the bar still lit me perfectly. I didn't stop running. I didn't look back. I didn't think about where I was going. I just ran, twisting down streets I didn't know, weaving through crowds, trying to blend in. But the memory of the phone, the tilt, the comments, stayed with me. I knew it wasn't over. I knew it couldn't be. Hours later, I finally stopped, collapsed on a curb, breathing hard, shaking. My phone was in my pocket, silent, but I didn't check it. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at the city lights, feeling watched, feeling exposed. And the memory of those words, "She's prettier than the last one," kept repeating, echoing like a threat. I don't know who else he streamed. I don't know how many people saw me. I don't know if it's still happening. But I do know that rooftop, that tilt of the phone, those eyes and those comments, they're burned into my memory, and no amount of distance or running will ever erase it. I thought I was just messing around on Tinder like usual, swiping mindlessly while scrolling through memes when I matched with him. He seemed normal enough, funny enough to keep me chatting, sarcastic enough to make me laugh. I didn't plan on taking it seriously, but after a few days of texting, I felt weirdly drawn in. It wasn't the usual thing. It wasn't like I thought, oh, maybe he's cute or whatever. There was something in the way he responded that made me feel like he was paying way too much attention. Not like obsessive attention, but the kind that makes your stomach tighten without a good reason. I decided to send him a selfie one night, not some cute pose, just me, tired and messy in my room, trying to look normal while the streetlights painted lines across my face through the blinds. Behind me on the table, I left my little kitchen timer ticking away, just visible enough in the shot. I sent it with a caption asking him what he thought about it. I wasn't thinking, honestly. Just wanted to see if he'd notice. He responded right away. The question was casual at first, like he was curious, asking what the timer was for. I replied, joking at first, but then I typed it out carefully. Don't be late. It's for you. I thought he'd laugh or call me dramatic, maybe even tease me. But the way he responded, it wasn't laughter, it wasn't joking. It was calm, like he understood exactly what I meant, like he'd been waiting for that moment. The next day, we met at a tiny diner tucked into a side street in the industrial part of town. The kind of place with flickering neon signs, cracked tiles, and booths with faded leather that smelled faintly of grease and old cigarettes. I got there first naturally and grabbed a booth by the window. The sun was fading, and the city outside was messy and orange. I ordered a coffee, nervous like I always am when I meet someone from Tinder in real life. He arrived 30 minutes later, not apologetic at all, which annoyed me at first. He slid into the seat across from me, smiling, casual, like the timer thing hadn't been a big deal. But the minute he sat down, I noticed his bag on the seat next to him. I didn't see what was in it, but there was a faint weight, like it was packed with something dense. I shrugged it off, figuring it was just work stuff or his laptop. The whole date, though, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept noticing the timer in my bag on the table. It wasn't the one from the photo, but I could feel it like a presence. My hands kept brushing against it as it was moving slightly, like it was alive. Every time I looked at him, he had this calm, almost predatory focus, like he was measuring my reactions, waiting for me to do something small so he could notice it. At one point, I tried to take a sip of my coffee, and I realized the timer in my bag had been reset. Not the one I had at home, the small digital one I always carried when I forgot to set alarms for work, but another one ticking down. I froze. I don't know why. Something about seeing the numbers counting down toward zero made my chest tighten in a way I didn't understand. I wanted to leave to throw my bag across the room, but my body didn't respond. He noticed, of course. He smiled lightly, tilting his coffee cup like he was just relaxing, perfectly calm, perfectly normal. But I could see it in his eyes that he knew exactly what I was feeling. Like he had orchestrated it, like he had planned every little thing to see me notice it, to feel that tick of panic. I tried to distract myself, talking about work, movies, random stuff, anything to avoid looking at the timer. But every time I glanced down, every time I even thought about it, I could see the numbers running down. 39 minutes, 38, 37. I don't know how I knew it wasn't just my imagination. My gut told me it was real, even though I didn't want to believe it. After the diner, he suggested walking. I didn't want to, but I didn't want to seem rude. So we walked along the edge of the river, the wind cutting through my coat, lights reflecting on the water like shards of glass. The timer was still in my bag. I could feel it vibrating slightly, a faint thrum that I couldn't ignore. And he was calm, walking beside me, hands in his pockets, not saying much, but I could feel his attention on me, measuring me, waiting. We ended up in this abandoned park on the other side of the city. Overgrown, benches broken, a swing squeaking in the wind. I felt trapped as soon as we stepped inside. The city lights didn't reach here, only the dim glow of a street lamp at the edge of the park. I asked him if we should go back. He didn't respond immediately, just smiled, glancing down at the timer in my bag, which I suddenly realized he had somehow gotten into. I didn't remember giving it to him. My stomach dropped. The timer had been reset again, now counting down faster, and he was just standing there, calm as anything. I wanted to run, I really did, but the park was enclosed by walls of old concrete, graffiti, and bushes too thick to push through easily. I was caught between him and the edge of the park, and the timer, tick, 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 like it was mocking me. I grabbed my bag, tried to pull it close, but he stopped me with his soft but firm hand. He didn't speak, just stood there looking at the timer, looking at me, waiting for the moment I realized it wasn't a joke. Minutes passed like hours. I could feel my heart trying to escape my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the bag open, smash the timer, anything. But when I did, It was just another timer inside, same numbers, same countdown, same feeling. I realized then that I hadn't seen the first one at all. The one in my selfie had been part of the game from the start, part of whatever this was. He leaned slightly, tilting his head, and I could see him checking the time on his watch, subtly, perfectly, like everything was synchronized. I realized then that the whole night, the diner, the walk, the park, the timers, it wasn't random. It was designed to make me feel small, like I was being watched, measured, prepared. I didn't know for what, but I knew it wasn't good. I tried to text someone, anyone. My thumbs fumbled on my phone. Nothing went through. The signal was gone, or maybe he was just watching my movements too closely. I could feel it in the way he stood, in the tilt of his head, in the way he smiled faintly when I flinched. Every step I tried to take away, every thought of escape, he anticipated it before I even moved. The timer ticked closer to 0. My breath came in shallow gasps, my mind spinning with panic. He reached for it, not aggressively, not forcefully, just calm, slow, precise. I let him, thinking if I could just get the bag away from me, maybe it would end. But when he opened it, there were more timers, lining the bag like some kind of collection. Every single one counting down, each with a slightly different number. Some longer, some shorter. I didn't understand. I couldn't process it. And then I saw the last one, tucked in a corner of the bag, the one that matched the timer in my selfie perfectly. I realized it had been with him the whole time, guiding me, leading me, controlling me. He held it up, and I felt this horrible certainty that whatever was about to happen, it wasn't by chance. It was planned, calculated, and I was trapped in the center of it. I don't remember how I got home. I don't remember the streets, the taxes, the door to my apartment. All I remember is the timer ticking in my head, the way his eyes had stayed calm, the way he had smiled like he already knew the ending. I threw the bag into the closet, unplugged everything in my apartment that could tick or beep, and tried to forget. But I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see the numbers counting down. I feel the tilt of his head, the calm precision, the way he planned every second to make me notice, to make me fear, to make me wait. I check my selfies now, carefully, obsessively, making sure nothing in the background gives him a way in. But I know it's not enough. I know he's waiting, and I know that timer, the one I thought was mine to control, was never mine at all. I met him on Tinder like any normal Saturday night, swiping while my apartment smelled like leftover takeout and candle wax. He messaged first, funny, kind of nerdy, but not in a way that made me roll my eyes. I liked that he noticed little things in my photos, like the doodle on my notebook, or the way my messy hair fell in one picture. The texts were casual at first, just teasing back and forth, but after a week it felt like he could read me better than anyone I knew. I told myself it was just a crush. I wasn't thinking beyond that. We decided to meet at his tiny photo studio downtown, one of those places that looks abandoned from the outside, but inside has soft white lights and vintage props stacked in corners. I got there first, and the smell of the place hit me. Chemicals, old wood, and faint perfume of someone else's photos lingering in the air. He arrived a few minutes later, wearing a hoodie and jeans, carrying one of those little digital cameras, the type that prints out Polaroid-style photos immediately. He smiled when he saw me and waved like we'd been waiting for this for years. The date started normal enough. We wandered around the studio, looking at props, pretending to be models for the sake of fun photos. Then he insisted we take a cute couple photo. I hesitated at first, laughed awkwardly, but he kept insisting, showing me the camera, explaining how the timer worked. He wanted it framed perfectly, me close to him, both smiling naturally. I went along thinking, okay, fine, why not? The photo was taken, and when the tiny Polaroid slid out of the camera, he held it like it was sacred. I didn't think much of it at the time, just glanced at it and smiled. The next few hours, we wandered the city, stopping at coffee shops, walking past neon-lit alleyways, laughing about dumb things. I had the photo in my pocket, out of mind, until I got home, and pulled out my phone to check messages. That's when I noticed something was off. My Face ID no longer worked. Not just a little glitch. It refused to recognize me entirely. I tried multiple times, adjusting angles, lighting, tilting my head. Nothing. My phone stayed locked, and I realized my reflection in the screen looked strange, almost familiar, but not exactly me. My stomach dropped. I tried everything, resetting Face ID, restarting the phone, even wiping the screen clean. Nothing worked. Panic started to creep in. I remembered the photo we took earlier, the little Polaroid sitting at my desk from the date. I picked it up to look at it. I swear, it looked normal at first. Our faces, smiling, the lighting soft, everything like it should be. But when I held my phone over it, the screen unlocked immediately, just like that. I froze. My heart thumped so hard I thought it might burst. I tried locking the phone and holding it in front of me, but the Polaroid could unlock it no matter what. I swiped, I tilted, I waved it away, but every time the camera recognized the image instantly. I tested it on apps, passwords, even banking apps. Everything. Everything unlocked when the phone saw the photo of me smiling with him. I thought maybe it was a weird coincidence, some glitch in the software, until I looked closer at the Polaroid. There were faint scratches around my eyes and mouth that I hadn't noticed before. Tiny markings, almost like etchings, subtle enough that I didn't catch them at first, but enough that they seemed deliberate. I tried to throw the photo away, rip it up, but when I did, it appeared on my desk again the next morning, face up, perfect, untouched. I started checking the studio online, trying to see if there was any record of him, the place, anything that might explain it. Nothing. No real address for him, no social media accounts. It was like he had disappeared into the city, leaving only that photo behind. I even contacted the studio, trying to figure out if they had cameras that did some kind of face data collection. But the receptionist told me the cameras were basic, nothing fancy. Then came the small details. Every time I left my apartment, I noticed people staring, or cameras flashing in the distance, or someone just holding their phone up casually in the park. At first, I thought it was paranoia, but over time, it became too precise. They'd catch me mid-step, angles that matched the Polaroid exactly, people recording me without interacting, just observing. And I realized it was tied to that photo. I stopped using my phone normally. I left it locked in a drawer, trying to avoid the unlock triggers, but it was like the image had been coded into the device itself. I couldn't take a new selfie without fear. Any photograph, any recording, could be used to unlock everything about me. It wasn't just the Face ID anymore. It felt like the photo had integrated itself into my life, my privacy, my control over my own image. I didn't sleep well for weeks. The photo sat on my desk, mocking me silently. I tried leaving it somewhere else, dropping it in the trash, leaving it in public, but it always ended up back on my desk, perfectly framed, untouched. The realization hit me slowly, like a poison drip. I was trapped by my own image. The picture he took wasn't just a photo. It was a key, and the key could open everything. One day, I thought maybe I could confront him, meet him again, figure out what it was about. But when I retraced the streets to the studio, it was gone. The address led to an empty lot, weeds overgrowing where the building had been. No windows, no doors, nothing. Like it had never existed. I called the number he had given me. It went straight to voicemail that never picked up. Every lead vanished like smoke. I tried making a new phone. Everything transferred, new Face ID, new system. I thought maybe it would reset. But the moment I placed the Polaroid in front of it, everything unlocked again. Even apps I hadn't restored, accounts I hadn't synced. It was like the photo knew the new device too. Like the image wasn't just visual, it was digital, coded, permanent. I stopped going out alone. I stopped using my phone for anything but emergencies. I covered the photo with a box, with books, anything to obscure it. But it didn't help. Sometimes late at night, I hear the faint click of the screen unlocking, even when my phone was on the other side of the room. I knew it wasn't a technical malfunction. I knew it was him, or at least the thing he left behind in that image. It became impossible to live normally. I couldn't post pictures online. I couldn't take selfies. I couldn't even glance at my own reflection without wondering if the photo had already captured it, stored it, marked it as a key somewhere in the digital world. The thought made me nauseous, anxious in ways I couldn't explain. My phone, my life, everything I thought I controlled was now tethered to that one small photo. The last time I saw him, he sent me a text that I didn't answer. Just a black screen with a single photo attached. The Polaroid of us. Nothing else. I don't know what he wanted, and I don't know if he's out there still, taking other photos, leaving other keys behind. All I know is that my Face ID, my digital life, my privacy, they're no longer mine. They belong to the image, to the moment he captured. I don't use my phone much anymore. I keep it in a drawer. I cover the Polaroid. I don't take pictures. I don't post. but sometimes when I glance at the screen, it lights up on its own. Sometimes I see apps open, notifications ready, and I know that if that image wanted, it could unlock everything. And I know I'll never feel safe using my own face again. I thought I knew him. Months of dating, endless texts, late night calls, weekend trips, little routines we built together. It felt like something real, something normal. I didn't notice the small oddities at first, like how he sometimes disappeared for hours without explanation, or the way he would glance at his phone and smirk without showing me anything. I brushed it off. I wanted to believe in us and him. The plan was simple. He invited me to his apartment for a casual get-together with his friends. I had met a few in passing, but never all together. He made it sound normal, easy, nothing serious, just a small Friday night hangout. I agreed, excited but nervous, dressed casually in a sweater and jeans, my hair pulled back, shoes I could run in if needed. I told myself it was just dinner, just drinks, just a night like any other. When I arrived, his apartment was warmer than I expected. Dim yellow lighting, mismatched furniture, the smell of something baking in the oven. It should have felt homey, safe, normal. But the moment the door opened and his friend saw me, everything froze. Conversation halted mid-laugh. Eyes widened. Body stiffened. The air got heavy in an instant, like gravity had shifted just for me. I stepped inside, trying to brush off the weird energy, joking lightly, trying to smile, trying to act like nothing was off. But one of them leaned toward another and whispered something. I didn't catch it at first, only the end. You look just like the last one. My stomach dropped. I tried to process it, tried to tell myself I misheard, that it was a joke, that it didn't mean anything. But the way they wouldn't look at him, the way their eyes flicked between me and the floor, told me otherwise. I asked what happened to her. I don't remember my exact words, only that my voice sounded small and strange, like it wasn't really mine. Silence. Not the polite, uncomfortable silence of someone who doesn't know what to say. It was a heavy, deliberate silence, loaded, tense, like I had opened a door I wasn't meant to touch. They wouldn't answer, wouldn't meet my gaze, and he sat there calmly, too calmly, smiling faintly, like he already knew how this would play out. The more I looked around, the more details I noticed. Their hands were tense, clutching mugs and bottles tightly. The way they sat, leaned, shifted, like everyone was holding back, bracing. Like something bad had happened before and they were too scared to speak. I tried to joke again, lighter this time, hoping to break the tension, but the air didn't change. It wasn't funny. It never was. I excused myself to the kitchen, telling myself I needed water, just a moment to breathe. And there on the counter, I noticed small things that made my blood run cold. A photo frame turned slightly, revealing a partially hidden image of a woman with the same haircut, same smile, same faint scar near the eyebrow that I had. She was in the same sweater I had worn once, same pose, same empty gaze. I dropped the glass in shock. It shattered on the tile. No one reacted. Not him, not them. Nothing. I backed away slowly, trying to understand, trying to find some logical explanation. Maybe a twin. A coincidence. A look-alike. But the detail of the scar, the sweater, the expression, it wasn't coincidence. It was deliberate. Someone had been replaced. Someone had been taken. And the moment they whispered the last one, I realized they were talking about me. Not the photo, not the coincidence me. I ran to the living room, trying to mask my panic, trying to figure out what to do, how to leave, how to call for help. But the door was blocked by him. Calm, gentle, smiling, watching me like a puzzle he had solved. Not aggressive, not angry, just observing. My breath came in sharp, shallow bursts. I realized then that every time he had been gone before, every time he disappeared without explanation, every time something felt off, it wasn't random. He had been preparing, planning, measuring. I tried to speak again, to demand an answer, but the words caught in my throat. Their eyes avoided him still, flicking nervously between the walls, the floor, the ceiling. I realized slowly, with a cold, creeping dread, that they knew what had happened. They had seen it before, maybe even participated in some small way, or maybe they were just powerless witnesses. Either way, they would not give me answers. I needed a way out. I scanned the apartment. The windows were closed, heavy curtains drawn. The balcony was locked. Every exit I had counted on in my head suddenly became useless. He watched me like he knew I was thinking, knew every angle, every escape route. And I realized he'd rehearsed this, anticipated this, controlled it. My fear was part of the plan. I took a seat cautiously, trying to act normal, trying to blend in while I processed. But I couldn't. Everything about the apartment, the people, the air itself screamed at me. I was in a cycle of terror I couldn't break, surrounded by people who refused to acknowledge the truth, led by someone who had orchestrated it perfectly. The calmness in his demeanor, the silence of the others, it was all deliberate. Hours passed in this suspended state. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. I couldn't speak. I watched him casually move around, pour drinks, chat lightly with friends, but every move was precise, controlled like he was balancing a delicate experiment, and I was the specimen. Every time I looked at the others, their faces were tight, nervous, unwilling to meet his eyes, unwilling to meet mine. I realized that he had done this before, many times before, and I was next in the cycle. I tried again to demand answers, to break the silence, but I got nothing. Not one word, not a single acknowledgement. They wouldn't talk to him. They wouldn't talk to me. The room was divided by invisible lines, boundaries I couldn't understand but could feel. I realized then that asking was meaningless. Observing was dangerous. Movement was measured. My body felt frozen, my mind spinning, and all I could do was watch. The evening dragged on, shadows growing long across the apartment, lights dimming outside. I noticed the smallest details. Cups placed at exact angles, chairs adjusted slightly, items shifted in ways that seemed deliberate, but I couldn't prove. He moved with purpose, calm, patient, waiting for me to notice, waiting for me to react. And I reacted. Every flicker of awareness, every subtle gasp, every instinctive movement, I knew he cataloged it. By the time the night ended, I understood something fundamental. This wasn't just dating. This wasn't casual or friendly or even romantic. This was a pattern, a system, a chain of events that repeated, that swallowed people whole, that erased identities. He had done this before, and I had unknowingly stepped into it. The friends, frozen, silent witnesses and perhaps accomplices in some small way, they confirmed the reality I feared. I was next. I left that night with a fake excuse, a promise to call later, and I ran through the streets trying to comprehend what had just happened. The apartment felt miles away, but I could still see it in my mind. The photo frame, the whisper, the calm smile, the avoidance of eye contact. I realized then that months of dating, months of routine, months of trust had all been manipulated. I hadn't known him. Not really. Even now, I can't think of him without feeling the weight of that apartment that night, that whisper. The calmness, the observation, the absence of answers, it follows me. I check my phone obsessively. I avoid photos. I scrutinize strangers on the street because I know he is out there, repeating the pattern, looking for the next one, the last one. I thought I knew how to end a date politely. I had done it 100 times before. This little nod, the smile, the casual walk to the car. That's what I thought I was doing when I met him at that tiny Italian place in the old part of town. Cobblestone streets, low-hanging lamps, the kind of place that looks cozy from the outside, but smells faintly of old garlic and fried oil inside. I got there first, of course, because I always do, and sat at a corner table where I could see the door. I ordered a glass of wine and tried not to think about how nervous I felt, how fast my heart was beating, even though I didn't know him beyond his messages on Tinder. He arrived 15 minutes later, polite, slightly smiling, apologetic for being a little late. The kind of guy who notices details you didn't even know you left out, like your favorite coffee order or the way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're thinking. We talked, laughed lightly, nothing too heavy, just enough to feel like maybe it could be normal, maybe it could be something. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I already knew I wasn't feeling it. He was nice, too nice maybe, attentive. But there was something about the way he looked at me, not in a staring way, but like he was cataloging every detail, saving it somewhere in his head. By the time we finished our pasta, I decided it was time. The polite ending. I told him quietly, calmly, that I didn't feel like it was going anywhere, that it was better to stop now than drag it out awkwardly. He nodded. Not a sigh, not a protest, just a small, almost serene nod like he had been expecting it. I smiled, relieved, maybe a little proud that I handled it without stuttering. I said my goodbyes, and he watched me walk down the street, fading into the dim glow of the city lights. I didn't think much of it after that. It was done. That was it. He had understood, I had understood, and I assumed we'd go our separate ways. But then things got strange almost immediately. I went home, locking my apartment door behind me, breathing in the familiar smell of clean laundry and old books, trying to shake off the tension of the date. I kicked off my shoes and poured myself a glass of water. Everything seemed normal. Too normal, maybe. I set my glass down on the counter and froze. There was movement in the kitchen. Not the shadow of my imagination, not the trick of light from the window, but someone actually there moving. Cooking. My stomach dropped. At first, I thought maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe I had left the door unlocked and someone broke in. But no, it wasn't random. It was him. Standing there, apron on, stirring something in a pot like he had always belonged here. I couldn't speak. My mouth dried up. I just stood in the doorway, unsure if I should scream or run or both. He didn't turn immediately. He just continued stirring, humming softly, like this was the most normal thing in the world. And then he looked up at me, calm, smiling slightly, and said the words that cemented the terror in my chest. He had figured we'd skip the awkward stage. Everything made sense, and nothing made sense all at once. The polite nod, the way he had handled the ending of the date, the serenity in his face, all of it had been a setup, a prelude. I realized slowly that he must have been watching, following, tracking me in ways I couldn't comprehend. Not a neighbor, not a friend, but someone who had prepared for this moment. My apartment, my keys, my routines, all of it no longer private. I tried to speak, to tell him he couldn't be here, get him to leave, but my voice failed me. The words caught somewhere in my throat, swallowed by fear and disbelief. He continued cooking, precise, careful, as though I wasn't even in the room. My mind raced, flipping through every detail I had shared with him, messages, posts, photos, even casual mentions in conversation. It all seemed too much to have been collected by accident. He had known everything. I backed away slowly, towards the living room, trying to find some distance, some safety, some barrier. He didn't move, just kept his eyes on me, calm, serene, in control. I realized then that the polite ending on the street had been part of it. The act of consent, the moment I thought I had power, had been an illusion. The door closing behind me was meaningless because he was already inside, already there, already planning the next step. He continued preparing dinner as if the day had followed a perfect script. The aroma of garlic and onions filled the apartment, nauseating me. It should have felt domestic, comforting even, but I couldn't see it that way. Every chop of the knife, every stir of the pot, was a reminder of how he had crossed boundaries, how he had invaded my life, how he had anticipated my every move. I was trapped in my own apartment, the space that had once been safe now transformed into a theater for his presence. Hours passed in a blur of fear. I watched him silently from the couch, trying to understand his behavior, trying to map an escape route in my head. I considered calling someone, but I didn't know if I could. Phones were too slow, too unreliable, and he seemed to know that instinctively. The way he moved, the calmness, the certainty, made it clear that he had rehearsed this, studied it, anticipated it. My home was no longer mine. Finally, he set the table with the precision of someone who had done this many times. Plates arranged perfectly, utensils aligned, glasses sparkling. I realized then that this wasn't just about cooking dinner. It was about control, observation, dominance, a perverse anticipation of my reactions. Every smile I gave, every shift of my weight, every blink was cataloged in his mind. I wasn't just a person to him. I was a subject, a puzzle, a participant in his plan. I stayed frozen while he continued moving around the kitchen. I considered running again, but even the thought of crossing the threshold of the apartment door seemed impossible. He was already aware of my position, my attention, my intentions. The realization that I was no longer in control, that the polite ending had been meaningless, made my heart pound and my stomach twist. Eventually, he noticed my attention and smiled faintly, as if reading my fear like a book. I realized that he had anticipated my every thought, my hesitation, my calculations. The dinner he prepared, the calm demeanor, the quiet control, it was all part of the performance, part of the game. I understood then that nothing I had assumed about consent, about normal boundaries, applied here. He had redefined them entirely on his terms. Hours later, after I had sat paralyzed, watching, trying to comprehend the scope of what had happened, he finally gestured toward the table, inviting me to sit. I didn't move immediately, my mind racing for options, for escape, for anything that might restore a sense of safety. But he waited patiently, calmly, as if time itself had slowed to accommodate the control he exerted over the situation. I sat eventually, not because I wanted to, but because the paralysis of fear had left me with no choice. Dinner was served, warm and carefully prepared, every detail precise. I picked at my food mechanically, aware of his gaze, aware of his observation. The apartment, once a refuge, had been transformed into a stage, and I was the unwilling actor. Every bite, every glance, every subtle movement was recorded in the theater of his presence. By the time the evening ended, I had understood something fundamental. The polite ending, the nod, the moment I thought I had power, had been nothing. He had already crossed the line, entered my space, anticipated my reactions, and ensured that my sense of control was an illusion. The apartment, the dinner, the calmness, it was all a demonstration of that control. I stayed awake that night, watching, listening, trying to anticipate any movement. The realization that he had invaded the space I thought safe, that he had rewritten the rules of my boundaries, made sleep impossible. The polite ending was gone from my memory, replaced entirely by the image of him cooking quietly in my kitchen, calm, in control, waiting. I don't know if he left that night or stayed until morning. I don't know how he planned it, how he knew every detail, how he anticipated my movements. All I know is that my apartment, my routines, my sense of safety, none of it was mine anymore. I locked every door, every window, checked every corner, but the memory of his calm presence, the precision of the dinner, the anticipation of my reactions stayed with me. Even now, I can't sit at my own table without imagining him there, stirring, watching, controlling. The polite ending, the nod, the walk home, it meant nothing. And the apartment, the space that was mine, now feels like his theater, and I am the unwilling participant.